All right. It's so wonderful to have everybody here today. I was mentioning to a couple of people, there's an aspect of this meeting today that almost feels like camp meeting. Am I right? A little bit? And I wasn't expecting that because I was not here at the last constituency, so I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I am pleasantly pleased, surprised that it has such a camp meeting feel so far today. So as Elder Norton gave his president's address earlier this morning, he had a lot of words that started with RE. Did you notice that? And at town hall as well. Restore, renew. Well, I'm here to remind all of us that education is evangelism. Amen? Thank you. The teachers that are here are probably really reveling in that clapping. The ministry of education is an evangelistic tool at work long before even people enter the church doors. I want to highlight a few of those that have come across my desk recently. And these actually come from MEE, our Mount Ellis Elementary School over here. I highlight different schools at different times, so today it's their turn. I've heard about a young student walking through the hallway, and on the walls in the hallway there was a picture of Jesus, and that young student pointed and asked somebody going by, "Who is that?" What an opportunity, right? Another example is a young student who decided that it would be a good idea to start a prayer group at lunch during recess with her friends. Isn't that great? The most recent one I actually learned about on Facebook. One of the teachers shared. At MEE, they have some students from MSU over there doing their practicum. The students from MSU that come over there are not Adventist students, and they may not even be Christians, we don't know, but they're doing an assignment for their program at MSU. And this student was talking to one of our teachers, and they said, "You know, I've never heard God talked about like how you talk about God." And that student also said, "You know, I went and talked to one of my friends and I asked my friend to pray with me." Amen? Yeah. So, we got a new clicker and it works. Oh. Maybe I'm not working it right. I was told, okay. Oh, there we are. Okay. This is a really long quote up here. But if you take a look at the top line of it there, and I'm going to have to look up here because I can't quite see that one. But it says, "In the days of Christ, the town or city that did not provide for the religious instruction of the young was regarded as under the curse of God." Those are some big words, aren't they? And being the education superintendent, that's a burden that I feel every day. But I want to take your attention now to the bottom paragraph. It says, "Every child may gain knowledge as Jesus did. As we try to become acquainted with our Heavenly Father through His Word, angels will draw near, our minds will be strengthened, and our characters will be elevated and refined." What a wonderful promise. It's not all on our shoulders, is it? This is God's work. Oh, I did it again. So there's a few pictures here of students in the process of learning. In one of the pictures, the teachers are the learners. So how do we know what should be happening in school is actually happening? Well, our education system has a few layers of accountability. And some of you might be involved in some of those layers. First of all, our highest level of accountability is to God. And every teacher that we hire, we want to make sure that they have a commitment to Christ and to Christian education. Another layer is accreditations. Every school goes through a full accreditation every 6 years, and we're doing 4 of them this year. Another level of accountability are the school constituency meetings, and my assistant superintendent, Marita Crew, and I have been traveling around to the different schools, attending those, and being encouraged by the plans and the goals that each of your schools are setting. Another layer of accountability is the level of board meetings, whether that's the Board of Ed or your local school board. All of those have eyes on the school to make sure that it is what it should be. Another layer of accountability, of course, is teacher evaluations and professional development plans. Our teachers are well aware of those, and we participate in those all the time. Here's some quick education department facts. The number of schools that we have right now, we have 11. 10 of those are elementary and 1 is secondary. The number of teachers is 24. I know we had some quotes earlier. We have 17 elementary teachers, and then we have not quite 15 MEA teachers, probably part-time and other faculty there. We have 5 full-time teachers over at MEA, full-time principal, and then we have other full-time faculty and a number of part-time teachers. The number of evaluations that we have been doing, boy, is there a way to fix that one word there? No, no way to fix that one word. Can you tell me what it says? I used this slide at town halls. I should have it memorized. Oh, credit. It's all right. The number of school accreditations this year, or since the last constituency, has been 9. There have been 8 elementary and then 1 secondary. During COVID, as everything has shifted, just like constituency meetings, our school accreditations have also had to shift a little bit, and we have tried to get back on track this year. So we have done that, and we've had 4, and we're still continuing them. 4 full accreditations for elementary schools this year, and then I believe 4 interim as well, interim accreditations, plus the secondary interim accreditation. The number of schools that reopened, that will be reopening, we have 2 listing is there, or 2 items there. The school in Billings opened this school year, and they opened as Trailhead Christian School. So it's good to have schools reopening. Am I right? We heard about a church that might be closing, but it's good to have schools reopening. The number of schools reopening for next year, which is really exciting, and which Aaron alluded to earlier. We have 1 school in Missoula that will be reopening for next year, and 1 school up in Shoto that will be reopening for next year. The one in Shoto has been closed for 23 years. And the one in Missoula has been closed for 2 years. There are individuals in each of those areas who have felt the call of God on their life to provide Christian education in their areas. And they have gotten together with the school board. They followed the different steps of reopening a school, and they've been interviewing, and they've each hired a teacher. And I just want to acknowledge the school board chairs of each of those schools. I know one is here, I'm not sure about the other one. But the one up in Shoto, it's Katie Harris. I don't know if Katie is here today. Katie Harris, I know her husband is here. And then the one in Missoula is Jennifer Kreider. Jennifer, can you raise your hand wherever you're at? Jennifer, so give them a hand. A year ago, I was assisting Mount Ellis Academy in the position of interim principal, and I wanted to know how many students could be potentially coming to MEA to know what type of a hill we were climbing for recruitment. And so I looked at the enrollment for grades 5 through 8 a year ago, and I looked at it again this year, so you can see the trends there. I can tell you last year, the outlook for this year was pretty grim. And I would say that it's still not great. We're kind of in a little bit of a slump for students coming up into Mount Ellis Academy from the grade schools, but then we have a bulge of students that are in like 4th and 5th grade now. Last year it was in 3rd and 4th. So we have that bulge coming, so it's a positive outlook, but for right now we have a few less than what we would like. Our enrollment trends over the last several years, you can see that they're not quite flatlined, but close. The year that COVID started, when it first started, our enrollment did drop. People, our schools closed and a number of people decided to homeschool or go somewhere else. But then as COVID continued and our schools started opening, we started seeing an influx of students from the communities. And it has been a blessing, actually, for a number of our schools where they're seeing a large increase of enrollment, especially here at Mount Ellis Academy, or Mount Ellis Elementary. So if you wonder, well, what schools do we have in Montana right now? That's the list of schools. You can see all the way through. And you can't probably see the ones that are in yellow, but those are the ones that are reopening for next school year. So you might be wondering, I hope you're wondering, how can you be involved with school evangelism? Well, first of all, you could attend their little school constituency meetings, and when I say little, some of them are discouraged because they think, I wish more people from our church would attend this so they can see what we're doing in our school. We want our church people involved. That's what a school constituency is. You can also volunteer at the school. You can do hot lunch. You can do field trips, you can be a chaperone, you can be a secretary. That would be a really big help to our head teachers. Did you hear that? That came from one of our teachers. You can donate to the school, you can help with fundraisers, you could help with marketing. I know that several of our teachers have asked, well, what about Pastor Carlisle? Would he help us with our school? And I said, well, his plate is kind of full. He is a pastor after all. Be on the school board, adopt your school's teacher. A number of years ago when I was a principal of a school, I went out to the constituent churches and I said, can you adopt one of our teachers? That means, like maybe sending them a card on their birthday, praying for them, certainly, maybe doing something special for their class. And it was fun to see the results. So in your areas, be thinking of how you could adopt a teacher just to encourage them and build them up. And of course, the most important is to pray for your school. So these are the 2 new elementary teachers in the 2 new schools. In Shoto, Zilia Capote, she's going to be the head teacher. She's coming from Florida. And in Missoula, it's going to be Sheila Armstead. She'll be the head teacher there. And I know some of you know who she is. And the Oregon Conference is very sorry that they're losing her, and they don't know quite how they're going to manage that. So at that school. So it's a really good thing. That came out wrong, didn't it? We need to be supportive of our sister conferences. I have to be careful because we are in the throes of recruitment right now, and between superintendents, we're all friendly outside of recruiting season. So we do have a few spaces that we still are trying to fill. Great Falls, although they do have an applicant that is going to be up there visiting this next week, a position in Libby, and a position in Hamilton. So I would love nothing more than for all of you to bombard me with ideas of teachers that would go great in these schools. We are in a drastic teacher shortage, and we're only at the beginning of a shortage that will last likely for a number of years. So again, if you know of any teachers, bombard me afterwards. And I'm just going to go through some pictures of our current teachers. I won't read them all, you can read. I am so blessed to work with this group of teachers. I can't tell you. They work a tremendous amount of time for the dedication of their students. I receive phone calls from them and texts from them at all hours, and the concern that they have for their schools, the parents, and grandparents too, because grandparents are raising kids as well. It's to be commended. All right, well, I'm going to switch hats now because I am also over the youth department. And the youth department in Montana means Pathfinders, summer camp, those two main areas. So the active clubs of Pathfinders, when I first came here, I thought it was 3 clubs that were active. I think it was more like 4, so I put that on the graph. You can see how it has grown. There was a huge growth spike, and then suddenly it kind of went down, and that was as a result of COVID. The club stopped meeting, but we're on the rise again, and Josh Holloway is our conference coordinator. That's the title that we decided on, right? There's only one area, and that's the area of Montana, so he's our conference area coordinator. It's fun to work with Josh, but we're going to be thinking of new ways to build up the number of clubs again. Here's just a couple pictures of our clubs being active. Adventures on the left, that's a local club. And then a small club over in eastern Montana in the area of Glendive. That was a team that just completed a Pathfinder Bible experience. For those of you who remember maybe some of the older days, called the Bible Bowl, and they're just shown after they got done with that, so it was really fun. One of the big news items that's happening in Montana in September is that the North Pacific Union Conference Camporee is going to be held here. Montana is hosting that Camporee. It's going to be held over in Kalispell in the fairgrounds, and it's going to be exciting. We've been planning, I think we're almost on a weekly planning Zoom meeting now, at least every other week, and the activities, we're trying to weave in some mountain man activities, hikes into Glacier, and community service things as well. A couple of the items that are going to be new this year are we are going to be opening our Union Camporee to a limited number of Pathfinders outside our union. That hasn't been done before that I know of, so we're opening that up so other unions can send their kids here. Not all unions are back up and running yet because of COVID. Montana, well, Montana. So we're inviting them here, and they'll enjoy the great outdoors. Another item that's a little bit new is we're trying to brainstorm ways to get more kids involved to reinvigorate our Pathfinder clubs. And so we're going to be allowing registrations of non-Pathfinders into the NPC Camporee. So that's exciting news. And I believe that the marketing efforts got launched this weekend. Josh, did you check to see if that happened? Or Pastor Carlisle, I know he's helping with us too, but there were plans to have that launched, websites and registration. So be looking for that with that logo, the Let's Go logo. And Camp Paxson. How many of you have been to Camp Paxson? Okay, long-held tradition, right? This is a unique camp just located on Seeley Lake, and every year we rent the facilities for 1 week for our youth camp. Exciting things happen at summer camp, and I know that I shared this story at the town hall meetings, but I'm going to share it here as well. There was a young boy from Billings, his name is Riley. A couple summers ago, he was at summer camp, and he saw another boy get baptized at summer camp, and it did something, it stirred something in him, and he said, you know what, I think I want to get baptized, and I want to get baptized at summer camp. Well, unfortunately, that was exactly when COVID hit, and we were not even allowed to run the camp in that county, so we had to take a break from summer camp. And his pastor, Pastor Stephen Carlisle, worked with him, and he said, well, Riley, it's okay. We can have our baptism here at our church. Not a problem. And Riley said, no, I want to be at summer camp. So he waited all that time until we could open up again. And so he was baptized last summer at summer camp, and you'll see a little clip of it here. And it was really neat. On that day, it was July 3, so it was all of the 4th of July crowd. And I was worried because right where the boat dock is, boats go by, and there had been a lot of loud noise and music and partying because it's 4th of July. Right when Pastor Carlisle went into the water with Riley, everything just stopped. And I was looking, thinking, oh, well, that's kind of weird, but I hope it holds. And it did. And just as they were done, then a boat kind of came past. It was really a neat experience. I don't know how many on the other shore were watching, but what a neat thing for the 4th of July crowd to see is a baptism. So we're going to try to get this started. I'll give you just a little snapshot. Video credits go to Pastor Carlisle. He makes camp look great, doesn't he? One of the most important impacts on our church is working with the youth. Education, Pathfinders, and summer camp, those are evangelism. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to submit my report. Where did he go? There.
Is there a second to accept? Wonderful. Are there any questions? Comments? All right, we'll open it up for voting. All right, have a majority, and it passes. Elder Friedman, invite you forward. Take this next segment. And Kayla Johnson.
All right, thank you. All right, Kayla, thank you for being up here, helping me here. We had a really robust time on the nominating committee. We had fun together. We spent a lot of time in prayer. And so it's now time to move into that nominating committee report and give you a chance to hear it and also then to vote on it. So first, before we do that, I got a little housekeeping item to take care of because I just wanted you to understand we missed 1 year. We voted on that in the beginning, right? So that we could do our session right now. And it was voted by the board of directors that since our directors are new, that we'll just start a brand new 4-year term, okay? And for some conferences, and even the general conference, they're just taking where the session is and they're keeping their rotation the same. So, you know, every 5 years at a GC, we've kind of got it all down that on 0s and 5s, we're going to have a general conference session. And so they're going to leave it that way. So when they vote this summer in June, then we're going to have another session 3 years later in 2025. Okay? However, the recommendation for you and the Montana Conference is to go 4 years and then keep the rotation going after that. Okay, knowing that we've missed a year. And so what I'd like to do is, do we have a motion that we could put up on the board there? All right. It may come. Well, that's for voting. All right, yeah, motion to designate all elected positions to a 4-year term. So first of all, that's what comes as a recommendation from your executive board of directors, and I need a motion for this meeting to put it on the floor and then be able to vote on it. All right, so we have a motion, do we have a second? Okay, several seconds. And are you ready to vote, or do you have any questions on that? Okay, you can see the vote is either yes or no. All right. So you can go ahead and vote. Now, as we're waiting for this vote to come up, I just want you to also know as we get into these names, the reporting secretary is my friend, okay? And she's here to be able to give you the names, read the report off. She was part of the nominating committee. In fact, we do have all the nominating committees are delegates, and so we'll put that up here on the board in just a second. So that passed by 95 to 5%, so that's strongly passed. We appreciate that. All right, now, do we have a slide with the nominating committee on it next? Yes, there they are. I had a wonderful time with this group. They were fun to work with. Again, we prayed quite a bit. We went through this book, which had evaluations for all the people who were being nominated. And so, if they're here today, could they please stand, by the way? We just want to recognize the work. They gave me all day, okay? They came out on a Sunday, and now 2 weeks later, here they are again. So thank you for your commitment to the work of the church. All right, so let's go and start, Sheila, with the nominating committee report. We have nominees for the executive officers. Now, I didn't say this, but they all need to go out. Are they all out? Okay, they are out. And we'll bring them in when we elect them or not. We'll just make that one at a time. Okay, nominees for executive officers is number 1. Go ahead, Sheila.
Right. Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee recommends the name of Ken Norton to serve in the position of President of the Montana Conference for the next quadrennium. Therefore, I move the name for his consideration.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? All right. So moved and seconded for Ken Norton, a new president here. I was pleased to hear that he's gotten almost around to all the churches since he's been here. And but it was highly approved. And our nominating committee, if we didn't have a unanimous decision, we had almost unanimous in all of these officers. So we're really pleased with the response that we have seen on the nominating committee to bring them here to you today. So are you ready to vote? Okay. So take your clickers and we will have that up. And that's a simple up or down. Number 1 is yes, number 2 is no. Are you liking these clickers, by the way?
Yeah.
Good, because we bought them at the union and we're using them at all our constituencies around the union, and everyone seems to enjoy them quite a bit. So, all right, and I do think 30 seconds might be enough. You guys are pretty quick. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, all right. So I think we ought to clap for that one. That was very well done. If we could bring out, okay, all right, we're going to bring them in, and we have a gift for them from the union. Yeah, Ken, come on up. And Julie. Yeah, congratulations, both of you. It's really good to have you part of this team and our union. Ken, thank you.
Thank you.
Good job. And just a gift from the union here, and flowers. And thank you for.
Thank you for letting us serve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to say a few words?
No, that was it. We're your servants. We work for you, and we work for God. This is His work, and I am very grateful. I just have partner in missions, or she's been through so much as we've been overseas and do it. It's just really God puts you together, and He gives you a job to love people and to spread His word. And we're so privileged to be here in Montana. You're a wonderful family. I'm not going to get emotional because it's just
Thank
beautiful.
you for continuing to allow us to have the privilege of being a part of Montana family. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I think we have another one here.
Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee recommends the name of Jim Jenkins to serve in the position of Vice President for Administration of the Montana Conference for the next quadrennium. Therefore, I move his name for consideration.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second? Second, okay, thank you. And I think we're ready to vote right now. So there's the recommendation, and we're going to put the vote up there. Yet 1 is yes, 2 is no. We voted up, we voted down. All right. How many do we have delegates? 236. 236. There's just a few that are still not sure.
Oh, is it 47?
247. Or else they are falling asleep after lunch, one or the other. So, okay, and here it is. All right, that's very, very strong. Very, very strong. Okay, I think we'll have Ken. Rick is getting them. Yep. Excellent. All right. This stage is going to get small fast, but we need to do this. Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations. All right, Jim. Glad to have you part of the team here. And it's a gift from the union. Bill is the Vice President for Administration for the union, and he's given a gift to the Vice President for Administration to your conference. And so we're really thankful. And Jim, any words you want to speak? I know you don't want to do this, but could you just say a word?
Yeah, for those that know me, I don't really want to say anything right now. I would just say this. From the moment I became a pastor to this, it has been a total God thing because none of it was planned when I went from a printer to a pastor in a month. And then this July when this happened, it wasn't what I was anticipating. And I truly know how Solomon felt when God asked him if he could have anything in the world that he wanted, a blank check. He asked for wisdom, and that's my prayer because I do not feel worthy, qualified, any of the above to be anywhere where God has called me, but by his grace we hopefully go forward. So appreciate your support and your support of our conference here.
Amen. Amen. All right, we have one more officer.
Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee recommends the name of Erin Tungesvik to serve in the position of Vice President for Finance of the Montana Conference for the next quadrennium. Therefore, I move her name for consideration.
All right, and so we have a second out there. All right, lots of seconds. Okay, so we need to vote on this now. Either yes or no, up or down. And you take your... Now, everyone's awake, right? Prove to my team in the back we can do this in 30 seconds, okay? The NPUC has a constituency coming up. We're going to try 30 seconds. So, well, that's 237. I think that's where we've been landing about, so you did it. It's a good group. I like this group. All right, 2, 1, and all right, another very strong vote. Thank you. We could get Erin out. Erin, here she comes. All right. And again, we have some gifts from the union. Our North Pacific Union treasurer and his wife are going to be sharing some flowers and a gift. Yeah. You might want to change that around. I don't know. That's good. It's all good. We understand. Aaron, do you want to say anything to the group?
On the spot.
Yeah, on the spot. Just 2 words.
Can I just say thank you?
Yes.
Thank you for trusting me with this, and I will try my best.
Amen. And you have been doing a great job already, so thank you for your work. And we have one more. It's the departmental director. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the nominating committee recommends the name of Renee Young to serve in the position of Director of Education and Youth Ministries of the Montana Conference for the next quadrennium. Therefore, I move her name for consideration.
Okay, Renee. Do we have a second for that? All right. Yeah, you got 2 votes. All right, great. And so now it's time we can put that up for a vote. We voted up or down, yes or no. And you can do this in 30 seconds. Okay, yeah, I think you're doing good. We're waking people up down there saying, you got to vote. Okay. We can move it to 30. We're good, yeah. All right, there it is. Okay, another strong vote. I thank you. Someone bring Renee out. All right. As Renee's walking up, and our education director also has a gift, and so I want to say you have a wonderful team of officers here in this conference. In fact, I am fighting other conferences off so that you can keep them all here for the next term. So, great team, great team. All right, Renee, any words that you would like to say? And we know that you do. You got.
I wasn't told about that, but thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing to support your schools and any new schools in the future. Thank you.
All right, I want to invite my team up, Bill and Mark and Dennis, and we're going to have a special prayer dedication for your team. The union is only as good as the leadership teams we have in the conferences. And so we're glad for this team here. And we know that there's no way that anyone on this stage can do their work and do it well unless they're anointed in the Holy Spirit. And so we want to pray for God's Spirit to fill you and continue the work through you to move this conference forward and closer to the kingdom every single day. So we can open more schools, and we can plant more churches, and we can see more people come to salvation in Christ Jesus. So let's pray. Father in heaven, we lay hands now on our esteemed team here in the Montana Conference. We're so grateful for each one of them. What we've done today, Lord, is nothing small. In your eyes, it is pretty special. For you have chosen, Father, and placed and picked out and sanctified that which we have done. We've invited your presence to be with us. We've prayed over the names and nominating committee. We've prayed for several weeks now as we've gotten to this day. And Lord, we prayed several times today. And we want you, Lord, to receive all the glory for every good thing that comes out of this team as we move forward. We thank you for this conference that they're leading. And I pray, Lord, for responsive hearts, just like we've seen today. And that, Lord, you will anoint not just these leaders, but the entire conference with the early and latter rain of your Spirit. Yes. We're too close, Lord, to the end of time. And Lord, as our president said, as Ken said, this cannot continue to be business as usual. The time has come where we lift up Jesus as we've never lifted him up before. Lord, we want to go home. And the time is now. There's too much evil in this world. It's time for Jesus to break through the clouds of heaven. So, Lord, bless this team. As they work together, let them work together as one. And as the Spirit flows through them to this conference, Lord, we thank you for the work that you will do. And we praise you today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. Battery change, right?
I want to invite Principal Dane to come forward. Have our Mount Ellis Academy report. And Dane and I talked a little bit before we were talking about how to transition and so forth, and I told him I would come up here with him and mention something that we wanted to make clear as a conference and as an academy. There is something I super appreciate about Dane, and that's his transparency. Dane is someone who not only is a great leader for Mount Ellis Academy, but he is very transparent. He comes over to the office all the time talking about, hey, can we do this, and what about this, and what about putting this committee together and so forth. He is a go-getter. And so when we started discussing about land use and all of that, that's been going on for years, but Dane's really pulled it together since he's been here this last year. And we came in about the same time, so we really enjoy working together. But we wanted to make clear that today is not going to be a day that there's going to be a vote on selling the land or any land. Okay, so just want to be clear on that as we're going into this. As chairman, I won't accept any motions to sell land or to not sell land. Dane wanted to put in his report, and we had a long discussion about this together with administration, saying, should we even talk about it? Should we talk about what the land use committee has even put in there? And as we discussed it, we're like, I think it's appropriate to talk about what they came up with and putting it, but Dane's like, I don't even want it to go to a vote. We're not far enough along, and I don't want to steal what you're going to talk about, but not far enough along for that to happen, and so we said, okay, we're not doing a vote today, but just wanted you to know that it's a report, and then he's going to talk about future pieces as we move into that. Is that the right thing? When we were talking about what I was going to say.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Is that the clicker?
Yes.
No, that's the wrong way.
It seems to go opposite, so there you go.
Oh, There we go. Hi, everybody. My name's Dane Bailey. I have been blessed to be here a whopping 10 months now. My family and I moved down after 12 years up in Alaska, and been very, very blessed. We worked at a school up there where started out a very small school, kindergarten through 6th grade with 19 students. Ended up, last year I was there, we were the newest senior academy in the NAD. We had about 110, 115 students, and God really blessed our time up there. And it was one of those things that my heart was very much torn. We felt as a family God was calling us elsewhere, and we were looking for places. And I've never actually applied for a job within Adventist education. I've taught for 22 years. This is the first time I've actually gone out on a limb feeling God calling me to apply, and I had 3 choices. I had Loma Linda Academy, I had Pine Forge, and I had Mount Ellis. And as I like to say, I grew up in Northern California, but California is a great place to be from right now. I didn't want to go back. I didn't think, yeah, woohoo! I didn't think Pine Forge was necessarily my cup of tea. And so Mount Ellis, I thought, oh, we'll try that. And I threw my resume out there, got sent back a video interview very quickly, did that, which, by the way, is super uncomfortable to sit there and have to record yourself and submit it, because you can watch your answers and then say, oh, that looked bad. And so you end up editing yourself for about half an hour. It was crazy. And then didn't hear much, and thought maybe it fell through, thought maybe God was making it clear where I needed to be, and got to a point where, as a family, we maybe thought God was calling us to stay up in Alaska. And I sat down with my kids, and we'd prayed about this as a family, and I said, I think I'm going to withdraw my name. I don't think God has us going there. I think I'm going to withdraw my name. And my kids looked at me and said, Dad, you have always told us that you allow God to open and close doors, and you step as long as the door's not closed. So why are you closing the door? And have you ever had your kids rebuke you like that? You're like, what do you know? No, okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, maybe we ought to try that. And I'm here. So God really did open the door, and God has blessed us. I've been very, very blessed to get to know part, and a very small part in 10 months, of the Mount Ellis community and the passion that is here for this school. And I just want to share that, and I want to thank you for that opportunity. So I just want to share some cool things that have happened this year so far. This year, Pastor Jim, before he ditched us for the conference, started up a student chaplaincy group. And it's been a pretty powerful thing. It's a group, now we have our class chaplains, but the student chaplaincy group's a group of young people in our school who feel a burden that God is calling them to lead out spiritually. And they've put together student-led Bible studies on a weekly basis. They've led out in a student-led week of prayer. They organized a glow tract handout. They're moving and leading other students in spiritual endeavors, and it's been really, really cool to see. I do wish I had more time to really mentor this group. I haven't this year. But I can see the future for this group being where they take this chaplaincy group, they lead groups, and they go out into the conference and run services at different churches around the conference. They lead out in service opportunities around the conference. And I'm really excited about building on the foundation that's been set this year. This one's kind of funny, well, not funny, but really powerful to me. We have a young man who did a chapel. We have the classes running chapels once a week, and he did this chapel where he got up and spoke. And I would love to tell you it was super memorable chapel and all this kind of good stuff, but he mumbled and spoke so quickly I didn't really understand what was going on. So I went up to him and asked afterwards, and his chapel was literally about how Mount Ellis saved his life. He's a young man who came here and who had made bad choices in life and was struggling with his friends, and he really didn't want to come, and this, that, and the other. And as we sat and talked, he revealed that he was into self-harm, and he really just kind of hated his life, and he was really struggling. And by coming to Mount Ellis saved his life. And he was wanted to testify to that. Granted, he mumbled and he kind of spoke really quickly, but the idea was the fact that he was even able to stand up and say that is a huge testimony. And the ministry, the powerful ministry that young people can have amongst each other, that's a total testimony to that. They loved him into somebody that he could accept who he was. And that's pretty powerful. Another theme, I started reading a book February-ish called Atomic Habits. And the gentleman in there named James Clear, the author, has done research on change. And one of the things I've started at a week of prayer we did a couple weeks ago, and I think I really want to emphasize for next year is this idea of a 1% change. Major change in life does not occur, if you hadn't noticed, by New Year's resolutions where you say, I'm going to completely do a 90 in my life. Because you end up doing a 360 usually. And so what you do is what is one small thing I can do? And so for that week of prayer, what we did was I went through the story of the way Jesus dealt with the woman caught in adultery. And we talked about how Jesus manifested himself as a peacemaker, as a compassionate person, in love. And I challenged the kids. I said, what is one thing you can do to be more loving? What is one thing you can do to be a peacemaker? One small little change. I gave him an example. One of the things I've done, I used to be like one of those people who carried around my gallon of water. And the last year or two, I've kind of gone away from drinking my water more regularly. And so I made a 1% change, and it was to download an app. And I realized, it sounds really cliche, but there's this app called Plant Nanny, and it reminds me to drink water. And it's literally helped me so much. I'm consistently doing my water, sticking to it. And so it's like one little simple change to be healthier for me. And so we talked about that. And since that week of prayer, I've had kids come and sit in my office to talk about how they can manifest their 1% change, what they want to do, how they can be more effective in different areas of their lives. And it was pretty powerful. And I think if we really codify that for next year, that's going to be a powerful way to change young people's lives as well. So when I came for my interview, Renee sat me down for about an hour and a half and just listed stuff, listed things. And I remember walking out of that one and a half hour interview going, oh boy. And she did a great job of putting my feet on the ground. And there was about an hour after that. I was like, maybe that's a closed door. And it was interesting because I went through the rest of the day, and God speaks to me in very unique ways. I like to solve problems. Problems make sense to me. Here's the issue. Here are the steps we need to take to solve it, and here's the resolution. And God opened my eyes and opened my heart to see different steps and different pathways to resolution of problems. And by the end of the day, we went from, again, Cerise and I went from, the world is probably not calling us here, to this is literally, I think, where God has us to be if they offer us the job. And one of those issues was the historical, last decade of the budget of Mount Ellis Academy. And I have some slide. Oh, no, that's not the one I wanted. Can I get away from that? Is the budget not right after that? Okay. Maybe there's another slide eventually. Anyway, so we've been in the black every month this year so far. That's the first time in a decade Mount Ellis Academy has been in the black. Thank you. As you can see up at the very top here, you have all these numbers on the very far right, and I do apologize. The numbers I have only go to December, but so far we've been that as well. We're in the black. Our operating expenses are not above our unrestricted income. Part of that is I can't stand debt. Part of that is we're doing a really good job of communicating what our budgets and our allocations are. Part of that is we've established a reimbursement protocol. So it's not like we can just spend money and then hope somebody takes care of it. We're starting to become more fiscally responsible. We've also been blessed that no building has blown up, no cars have broken down, we haven't had to buy a new bus. Those have been blessings as well, but the reality is we're literally working hard to become more fiscally responsible. And I personally, I find that really, really important. Can we go back to the other one real quick? Thank you, by the way. Donations this year. Our donations have been spectacular. Cabrina Vinglis is our development director. Yes, please give her a hand. And she's done a spectacular job of reaching out and creating a community, a group of people who are willing to give and donate. We have, as of I believe January, we had unrestricted net asset donations in excess of $400,000. Can you go back to the other one again? If you look, our history of our unrestricted net assets, if you even look just 2 years ago, we were $845,000 in the red in our net assets. That's in debt. If you look at as of December 2021, we're in the black. Now, that's a beautiful, lovely picture, but it's a little too rosy for reality. A lot of that is donations that have been given to us, so it's good. We're in progress, we're getting healthy, we're making good steps, but what takes 8 to 10 years to get into does not take 1 year to get out of, or even 2 years for that matter. One of the things we're looking at is a significant amount of increased expenses for next year. If you want to go back, I have that up there. Thanks, appreciate it. I'll tip you later. So we have a lot of expenses for next year. Our insurance has increased. Our health insurance has increased. There's a 6% cost of living increase for staff. If you hadn't noticed, prices have increased around. So our budget looked pretty rough and what we're going to do is we're going to take a lot of the overage for this year to help cover expenses next year. Lord willing, we'll have donations again, but we need to get to a point where as a school we are no longer dependent upon generosity and donations for a third of our operating budget. A healthy entity, the most you want donations to be part of your budget is 10%. We're at about 33. So we need to get to a point where that's not the case. And the way to do that is to get healthy. Hey, can we play that video at the very end? It's kind of out of place. Can we skip a couple? Oh, okay, yeah. And the way to get healthy is to plot a path to the future. You can't look at your own toes and figure out where you're going. So you gotta look down the road. And the first step is to recognize that we do not live in the 1970s, 1980s anymore, where parents are fine to let their 13-year-olds go off and live in a dormitory. This is not the culture we live in. There are those who are okay with that, and I'll be honest with you, my oldest child, I'd have been okay with that. My youngest, not a chance. It's just the reality of who they are. So one of the things we're gonna start to establish, and I'm looking to establish this beginning next year, is what's called a distance learning program. The joy of COVID is it kind of forced us all into recognizing we can do things differently than we have in the past. And so with distance learning, what we're gonna do is we're gonna redefine the modern classroom to create a live in-class experience that kids at the different schools around the conference can actually participate in. So if you have a 9th grader who's not coming to Mount Ellis Academy and the parents don't want to send them to public school, they can join our distance learning program where they will be part of the classroom. There will be cameras on the teacher, on the class. There'll be a big TV with that student's face in it. Once a quarter, that student will come for a week to participate in on-campus activities. Through that program, you're offering the parents an opportunity to see what kind of education we offer, to develop a relationship with our teachers, and those kids to kind of develop, to become part of our community, part of our family at Mount Ellis. The goal being, if we offer it for 9th and 10th grade, eventually, by the time they get to 11th grade, that parent recognizes this is a place for their child to be. So we're offering that bridge through our distance learning program. I think I can do this now. Another aspect, trade schools. We as an educational system have gone away from trade schools. We've very much pigeonholed what you can be. And the reality is not everybody is bound for college. Not everybody is to fit this cookie cutter that we seem to think every student needs to fit in. And so we're aiming to start a trade school program. Next year, we're on track to start an HVAC training program. The goal is to have a 2-year training program for 11th and 12th grade. In 11th grade, they get an opportunity to experience what that program offers. And then the 12th grade year, they actually get into a certification program. Their classes aim at certification. So by the end of the year, they can take a certification test. That student can be certified as they move directly into the workforce. Next year, we're working for HVAC, future potential trades, plumbing, auto mechanics, coding, gardening. It's a ton of different things. The reason that historically that has not worked in Adventist education is because they have tried to monetize student labor. The kids do something and they sell the result of what the kids do. The issue with that is you run afoul of student labor laws. This model wouldn't do that. We would offer those HVAC classes during the school day, and then in the evening, we would offer certification programs to the community. So the tuition that community members pay to go through those certification courses would help subsidize the program we're running here at MEA. And so, yeah, thank you. Oh, I should have looked at my notes. And that part of that is redefining our campus usage. When you're running a program that you're actually inviting community members onto campus, you run into a security risk. And our campus is absolutely perfect for this because we have literally, let me figure out which direction I'm pointing. We have a creek running through half our campus right over here. On the far side, you have the fire department. Their lease ends in another year or two. They have a bunch of bays that would be perfect for this. And so those evening programs can be on the far side of the creek, so those individuals aren't coming onto campus and interacting with our kids. I mean, it's like God worked that perfectly. And so anyway, I want to let you know it's been pretty amazing, and I'm somewhat dense. You know, God has to hit me numerous times over the head to get me to understand something. And as we were talking about this, I had somebody come and talk to me about it, and I was like, man, there's potential here. I need to brainstorm and really work on this. I've had a plumber come and talk to me. I've had an electrician come and talk to me. I've had a welder come and talk to me. I've had one of our students this year, his father is the manager at the Ford dealership here in Bozeman, and he was bemoaning the fact that they can't find any mechanics. They're looking for a diesel mechanic, annual salary of between $200,000 and $250,000 a year. Yeah, I'm like, what? Maybe I need to change. Anyway, but they. One of the things we've talked about is, because they're struggling to find mechanics all over the country, one of the things we've talked about is his dealership group thought maybe there's a way we could actually provide you with the trainers for auto mechanics from our facility, and when those kids graduate your program, we will hire them directly into our dealership group. So, and again, it's just like, you know, it doesn't take a genius to figure out maybe this is the direction we need to head. You know, so God's very gracious to me. He keeps hitting me over the head because I'm a little dense. But trade schools, both of these things, the distance learning, the trade schools, provide opportunities for students who wouldn't normally be part of the Mount Ellis family to become incorporated into our school. And then the other thing, when I got here, it didn't take a week before somebody came to me and shared with me the land use issue of Mount Ellis Academy. We are blessed in abundance with land that we are blessed in abundance with. And when I started meeting with people, we had two original proposals on the table, and it was, goodness gracious, I can't point, but there was a point near the conference office, and I don't know if that had anything to do with the fact of how we felt toward the conference office or whatever, but there was a point next to the conference office where there was an open-air storage idea, and what they thought was that we would enclose 3 acres. We would build it so we could store like RVs and stuff like that. And so we would enclose it, and that would be the first like baby step into land use and developing our land and getting money in our land. And as we looked at this, as we looked at the zoning requirements and everything else, we ran into an issue. The Bear Canyon zoning district requires us to have solid fencing around those whole 3 acres. And I'm not talking like shade fencing where you have kind of like a shade inside of a chain link fence. It's solid fencing. And when we looked at the cost of doing that, it was somewhere just shy for 3 acres of $700,000. At $45 a month for a lot, you know, to rent an RV spot, that would take us just shy of 10 years to break even. Now again, I told you I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but financially I was like, you know, that doesn't make good sense. So then the next step was closed storage, and we thought, okay, you know, the closed storage, but Bear Canyon zoning district does not allow for closed storage. The irony of this is Bear Canyon zoning district was started by Mount Ellis Academy to protect themselves. So we're fighting against our historic self. And then we thought, okay, well, let's broaden this. Let's look at the 362 acres. What can we do to develop this to bring passive income into the school? And we thought of a lot of different ideas, but we ran into an issue, and that is what's called a high water table. So that whole 362 acres has water that's extremely high. And the problem with that is you can't get rid of waste. So what do you do with the wastewater? You can't put it anywhere. And so, because we were thinking, okay, if we're gonna develop warehousing, retirement homes, anything like that, you have to get rid of the waste. And so there's no way to do that. So we thought, well, maybe we could put together a wastewater treatment plant. And this is the way we could deal with it. That would cost us anywhere from $3 to $7 million, depending on the size of it. And we found that the state of Montana, since 2009, doesn't allow the dumping of effluent. Dumping, that's probably the wrong word. The pouring of effluent, that's the treated wastewater. By the way, it's 99.9% pure. So if it's done right, it's purer than the water that's in the stream. But most other states allow you to pour it into a stream. Montana doesn't. And so you have to pour it on land, but you need at least 4 to 6 feet of topsoil between you and the water table to be able to do that. And we don't have that on any of our 362 acres. So the issue is, what do you do with the waste? We're hamstrung until we can figure out how to solve that problem. And I promise you, somebody somewhere has solved it. I just haven't found that yet. And so the goal is to figure that out. And then we have the ski hill. I found out that we actually have a land use and special use permit on the ski hill, which is seasonal, and that if we were to develop that into something like an Airbnb where we put lodging on there, put a place, like a septic system and stuff like that in there to develop it to make it useful, we would need a commercial lease, and we don't currently have one. Our lease expires February 2023, and I'm actually in talks with DNRC right now to extend the lease and change it. But a commercial lease runs at 5% of property value on standard, is what they told me. Now, when I first heard that, thinking about property values in Bozeman, I was like, ugh. But I don't know. I have to look into it. I don't know enough about that right now to speak intelligently to it, but for us to even start anything on the ski hill, it's going to be a year. And then we have to apply to DNRC because we're actually running into some problems because the person who oversees that area right now just changed last year. And the joy of the government is when the person changes, the way the regulations are interpreted tends to change. So we're running into that with a couple different things we've done up there. And so we have gone through a lot of different areas, a lot of different looks. And so this land use feasibility committee was put together 2 years ago to find out what is a proposal we can do, something we can do with our land. And so we looked at the 362, we looked at the ski hill, we looked at original proposals, and then we looked at the 120 acres here. And if you see the coloration of that, it is zoned R1, so residential 1 acre lots and residential 5 acre lots. That red stripe through those residential 5 acre lots. And we looked at that. And we looked at the properties around it. If you see the nice large pieces of property, those are owned by people who have a lot more money than we do. And originally I was told we wanted to, once upon a time, put the campus, rebuild the campus on there. But that wouldn't work with the zoning. It's R1, R5, residential. We want to put a camp on there, the conference camp. Again, wouldn't work with the zoning, so we'd have to go through a zoning fight. And the reality is, with the money that's surrounding that, in looking into it, you don't necessarily increase property value with a rural school or a rural camp. And so to try to fight that, I think there are people that live around there that have deeper pockets than we do. And so we were looking at different ways to approach this. And this is the proposal brought forth by the Land Use Feasibility Committee. And again, what I would like to do before, and I realize I've been here 10 months. I don't know the history of the conference. I don't know the conference. So for me to come up here and tell you this is exactly what needs to be done, I think is the height of hubris. What I would like to do is give you the proposal, and I would like to get your feedback. And if you looked into your booklets, and I'll show it here at the end, I've put together an online survey. I would like to get feedback so I can have a better understanding of where the conference is coming from, where the constituency is coming from. Because the reality is this, I am a servant of the constituency. MEA is a constituent school. And so I need guidance, I need your help in determining which direction we need to go. And the reality is somebody out there may have a much more brilliant plan than our committee could come up with. And so I would really like this feedback. So I'm going to share with you the proposal. The opportunity for feedback is right here. As a matter of fact, I went Friday and I was going to just look over the survey again just to make sure it said what I wanted it to say and everything. And I realized that when the booklet went out, it had the survey in it, and I already had 8 responses. So I didn't get a chance to review my survey. But the proposal is this, and it's a 2-part proposal. One is this. The proposal is basically to look at selling the 120 acres, to maximize the property value by breaking it up into 6 20-acre lots. Okay, it fits within the zoning, so even if they were upset about selling it, it still fits within the zoning. We wouldn't have to fight it. You preserve the agricultural nature, and if you look at it, it's broken down into the costs and the profit. The issue with selling land historically is that when land is sold, people take the money and just go on a spending spree. And that doesn't work for me. So if you look at this really quickly, you're looking at $75,000 to $85,000 an acre for a total profit of somewhere between $7.5 to $10 million. It's broken up right here in a way that you can't really read it, but it looks really fancy though. It's the pie chart. Sorry, I should have made it bigger. I apologize. But the issue is this. My goal is to put MEA on a path to long-term feasibility. Not short-term fix our issues, but long-term feasibility. And as I talked about earlier, that path requires us to get off a 33% need of people's donations to operate. Okay? I don't have an issue with people's generosity. Praise the Lord for it. But could you imagine if we had that generosity and we were able to use it for growth, and we were able to use it for vision? It'd be much more tremendous. So the issue is we take the money from the sale, the profit from the sale, and we put it into an endowment. And that endowment is very, very specific. That endowment is intended to make sure that I'm not buying a new car, or we're not putting gold lame, toilets and all this kind of stuff in, it's not being spent haphazardly. It literally creates a committee of somewhere, odd number, five members from the constituency. Not from Bozeman, not from MEA, but from the constituency. And those 5 members oversee the allocation of the monies in a way that is very limited within the endowment. So there's specific criteria established for the allocation of funds. It can be used for these things. That committee then meets. You have to submit a proposal to spend the money, and the committee meets to determine whether that proposal is approved or not. In other words, we're reallocating the asset from a land asset that sits there to an asset that has more liquidity to be used for the school. The idea would be not to spend the 10 million, 8 million, 7.5, whatever it ends up being, but to allow the interest to benefit us in the long term. And so the idea would be to make sure that endowment helps foster accountability and transparency. Part of that endowment would require us to report to the conference board of directors on a regular basis. If money is allocated, here's where it's going to. It's not something that 20 years from now you can all say, oh, they sold that land and we had no idea what happened to the money. Okay? It's something that's clearly shared, clearly articulated, and clearly intentional in its plan. And then I believe that's all I had to say about that. And again, if I didn't give you enough time to look at this, it's in your booklets, but this is where I would like your feedback. It basically asks who you are, what church you're from, whether you say yes to this proposal, whether you say no, and then it gives you a feedback. Thanks. And gives you a place to give me feedback and give me information. Because again, decision making without proper data and without proper input is very limited. And so I'm looking for your guys' feedback, your guys' input, because I would like to do this as a group and not as an individual who's been here 10 months telling you all what you're supposed to do. And so that's why I'm looking for your feedback. So I would greatly appreciate that. We were blessed earlier in the year with an opportunity to make a video. And so I'll let that play, and then I guess I'm done, but I guess I have to motion to have my report. So if we could just play the video, that'd be great.
Under the canopy of big sky, surrounded by shining mountains, God's invitation to adventure awaits at Mount Ellis Academy.
Adventure in the discovery of finding the evidence of God in all things big and small.
Adventure in the discovery of who He designed me to be.
Adventure in the discovery and development of each unique gift and talent.
An adventure in the life of service He has planned for me.
At Mount Ellis Academy, we are committed to preparing each student for the journey of adventure God intended, and a life dedicated to His honor and glory now and for eternity.
Since 1902, God's authorship has crafted the unique Mount Ellis Academy experience, and His hand will continue to guide our future.
All right, so Mr. Chair, I move that we receive the Mount Ellis Academy Principals Report.
All right. Is there a second to that? Good. Any questions for Principal Dane from anyone? Yes, sir. Mr. Jim?
Jim Bigley from Stevensville. So you mentioned that you had too much water on that 362 acres. Is there anything you can do with the water?
So I actually contacted the city of Bozeman to see if they'd be interested in doing a water for sewer switch, and they were not. There may be other things. It's a high water table, so it's not like it's potable water. You'd have to drill down. But yeah, so the only thing I've checked into so far is seeing if Bozeman would be interested in taking our water and running a sewer line out there, and they were not.
That's good. Another question? Yes, come forward.
I'm Sam from Hot Springs again. Have they ever considered tiling that ground and removing the water that way? I mean, they do thousands of acres out in the Midwest, under the corn patches and everything.
Yeah, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, so no, but it definitely could be something we look into.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
It's not cheap, but they do it on ag property all over.
You called it tiling?
Tiling. They lay underground like soaker hose, but it takes the water out of the ground.
And that would be one of the...
there's always a water shortage somewhere.
Yeah.
Put that on the survey. Those are the type of ideas I know.
Yeah, if you throw that onto the survey, it'll, because again, if I don't write it down, I don't tend to remember it super well. So if you type it into the survey, I greatly appreciate that. It's something I can look into. So thank you.
Thank you. Great ideas. Come forward.
Hi, I'm Ron Harmon. I'm from the Havre Church. And having done some development in the Havre area, that tiling idea, by the way, is a good one.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we have equipment that we have used for tiling in the past. We mainly do it in the Midwest on places where they're trying to get rid of excess water. So we'd be happy to work with you in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. It's this example of the gifts that are out. God's given you all the gifts. Let's just work together. It's great. Anyone else? Brother Steve? Yeah, go ahead, and then we'll come up. Yeah.
My name's Lynette Hetrick from Great Falls. What about farming? Leasing, farming?
So we are leasing it currently at $20,000 for the whole thing, so a guy can run his cattle on there. And the profit margin in farming is not quite to the point where it would make it worthwhile for us, nor do we have the resources to farm it. So we might, but I haven't looked into leasing it to farm for somebody else, but currently we have a agricultural lease going with cattle, and yeah, the price per acre is pretty minimal.
I was just thinking with the high water table, you'd have plenty of water to.
Yeah, maybe. No need to water.
I'm Steve Lloyd, a delegate at large. On a different topic,
sure.
A few years ago we had a joint session between Mount Ellis and the Board of Directors. I wanted to put the bug in your ear to have another one of those. Okay. I thought it was really good. We got to meet the teachers, we got to meet everybody from Mount Ellis, and it was really a great exchange, so I would just want to mention that.
Thank you. Yeah, one of my goals is to be as transparent as possible. That's one of the reasons I do like the recurring town hall meetings, not just once every 4 years. But yeah, and again, I'm a big fan of getting input so I can be aware of what's going on. And again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but that's a great idea. Thank you.
Nathan Knowles, Ronan, Montana. Wow, this is impressive, the voice in here. Anyway, but distance learning, I just wanted to ask, you had mentioned that. Is that something that's happening right now, or you're developing? Because I know some folks that there may be interest.
Right.
They just contact you.
So currently we got a grant this year to help fund the technology upgrades we would need. One of the realities of my job is there's just so much that it's really hard to focus on one thing or the other. So I've been so focused on the constituency that now I can start to look toward other things, and one of them is going to be distance learning. My goal is to get that going next year. That being said, the teachers sitting over here are going, what? We've talked about it a little bit, but I haven't really been able to cast that vision and work through it with them. But the intent, having worked in a school that worked with a distance learning program through Greg's International Academy, I learned a lot of what I didn't like about it, and my goal would be to make it as minimally invasive on the teachers as possible, yet still offer as immersive an experience as possible. So I kind of have visions in my head. It's moving now that I've get the freedom from not the freedom from this, of course, the blessing to be beyond this, to then really focus on that.
More to come. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, and if somebody's interested, have them contact me, please.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Paul Laddick, Stevensville. I grew up years ago under the FFA in the public school, and that gave us some great training because we did custom work around the community. And that gave us great training in equipment handling. And so there's another one to add to your skills, but it's also a way that you can develop an interaction with the community. Right. And even if you're not making money, you can break even on it. Right. And we never lost money in it because they charged full scale.
Right. One of the visions I kind of have is working together with Bear Canyon Farm, which is currently running right next to us. In creating an opportunity for those who want to go into farming or experience that, and that's something that needs to be developed. But that's a direction we've talked about.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Charles Gary in Conference Church. I was a student at Mount Ellis Academy.
Praise the Lord.
Years ago, back in someplace. Anyway, I was just curious over the years, the history of pastoring in this conference, and I like the idea of transparency. Mm-hmm. For my years of pastoring in this conference, we rarely knew what was happening at Mount Ellis as far as finances and so on were concerned. We didn't have, there wasn't the physical responsibility for the budget and how we were doing with the budget. All of a sudden we were hit with over $500,000 in debt at Mount Ellis, and we had no idea we were there.
Right.
So don't do that to us again.
Thank you, I will not.
Thank you, Charles.
Joshua Furnish from Boulder. So I have a 6th grader. I'm homeschooling.
All right.
And unfortunately, there's no Adventist academies around us. Both my kids grew up going through Adventist academies. However, Boulder chose us. My question is, doing the long distance learning thing, perfect. Can you start it for 7th grade? You start it there, and then
Maybe
just grow it from there.
So I think one of the things we can do is start the program, because the joy of anything is when you start it, you hit everything you can possibly think of, and then when you start it, you learn what you didn't think of. And so if we are able to pilot this, work through it, there may be opportunity to do something like that and train, once we've learned the errors and what the steps are, there may be a possibility of expanding that. But that's something we're going to have to work probably with MEE, since they're close to us, as far as what they would be able to offer and what we could facilitate through that.
Okay.
So
I just see
again,
tons of potential there, because I can't take my kid every day down to Butte. And
right, and one of the joys of Montana is it is a big state. It is spread out, and the population is very separate. So that kind of opportunity would be tremendous.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, Joshua. And we'll do our last one.
Annette Sample from Kalispell. I know that MSU has an excellent agricultural program, and I know that they do a lot of testing on crops. Is there any way that they would pay more than the regular farming market value for land?
I can check. I do know the MSU agricultural department does have a lease on land right next to ours. They're not using it currently for anything, but that again, please forgive me, I may not remember, but if you put it in the survey, please, I'll check it out.
What Dane's looking forward to is 242 surveys tonight when he gets home that are there, ready to go through.
So it is my wife's birthday, so I'm not doing anything like
not
that
tonight.
I'm already in trouble enough being gone all day.
Not tonight. Thank you. We already did a second. Are you ready to vote? All right, to accept your report, and then you'll stay here to do you want to do your bylaws?
Sure.
Piece right here. Okay. And there is a laser pointer on here.
See, you didn't tell me that.
Next time.
Making sure that
There we go. So your bylaws are in on page 20, and we did not put a slide up for those, but these are some changes that Dane's going to walk you through here.
Yeah, so I apologize, that wasn't learning, so I'll do that in the future. Really quickly, majority of the bylaws changes are just English, just correct it. As a school, we ought to probably speak properly for ourselves. There are some very specific ones. So if you look at line 35, that's English. Social aspects of each person to God's ideal for them as unique individuals. Should it be plural? Clarification in lines 43 through 48. Just specify who we're speaking about, students. To help students develop Christ-like character versus to develop Christ-like character. That truly is kind of what I need to do as well, but our goal is to help our students do that. So 43, 44, 46, 47, 48 are all specification. Again, line 67 on page 22, chapter 22, verse, no. Line 67, the word was shall consist of no more that 24 members, then would be the proper word there. And then line 71, at least 50% of the operating board is not elected, it's appointed. and it's defining it as the operating board. So just clarity. 75, 76 is the first one we actually get to talk about. So the term of elected members of the board shall be 3 years. So about 3 years ago, there was a move to expand the board of Mount Ellis Academy. Because all of those people came in at the same time, there's probably 3/4 of our board that's supposed to be leaving here within the next year. And one of the things you don't want to do is lose institutional memory and drop off all your board at the same time. So one of the things I'm asking by putting this in here, and I'll read it, line 75, the term of elected members of the board shall be 3 years unless specified otherwise by the Montana Conference Board of Education from the date of appointment. What I'm looking to have is to give the Board of Education the opportunity to vary those terms, maybe extend them. So in other words, when you're appointed to a single term, you can be reappointed to a second term, and then you're supposed to drop off. What I'm looking is when they reappoint, that they stagger those reappointments so we're not dropping everybody off in another 3 years. So we're staggering those second appointment terms to a year, 2 years, 3 years. So we're dropping only a small percentage off every year. So we're into the proper cycle, and we don't have 75% of the board dropping off. So that's why that wording is in there. Again, line 79 is just 3, should have a dash in there. Line 96 on page 22 and 97 is just clarity. We're not mailing minutes out, just in case anybody was concerned. We are providing them, and I chose the word provide because who knows in 20 years or 10 years what the method of dispersal is going to be. So currently it's email, and we use an app called Padlet. So provide minutes of all board meetings to board members in a timely manner. Lines 103 through 111, we are in the day and age where the Zoom has become the norm of meetings, and it's actually kind of nice. People who can show up in person can show up in person. People who live far away who don't want to make the drive can show up via Zoom. And so this gives us the opportunity to hold those meetings and validate Zoom votes and online platform interaction. So it's just updating for the times the language in how we are to meet and can meet. 126, all I wanted to do was not embolden while a board member. It seemed kind of like somebody was yelling at me. Again, 130 is just clarity, basic English. Their local conferences should be lowercase. Same with line 139 on page 24. 143, 144, Montana Conference Board of Education is not Montana Conference Board of Education K through 12. It's just Montana Conference Board of Education, so get rid of the K through 12. All personnel for full-time employment, that is the standard verbiage for full-time employees, FTEs, from the union. Again, 147 through 150, to develop an academic calendar to be presented to the Montana Conference Board of Education, get rid of the K through 12, which provides for a minimum number of school days and/or hours as required by the NPUC Education Code, which is the booklet that gives us our codes from the NPUC, and the state of Montana. We have to adhere to both. Montana requires number of hours per school year. The NPUC requires number of days. So we need to make sure that we adhere to both of those. So that's clarified in there. And also where those hours are found, it's not the Board of Education, it's the NPUC Education Code. Line 155, again, just spacing, or cause should be spaced. Lines 163 through 171. In going through the education code, these are responsibilities of the board that I thought should be added in here for clarity. Again, to participate in the process of school evaluation is scheduled by the Union or Conference Office of Education. When we go through our evaluations, I want to be able to utilize the board, and that way there won't be any question. I can gather them in and help them, because that's part of the joy of serving on the board, is you get to serve on the evaluations. 166, to assume responsibility for planning and funding a capital improvements budget. Since I know you've all been on campus, since you're all right here, you can look around and realize that we do need some capital improvements, and as we get financially healthy, that's the next step, is to begin to take care of the facility that God has given us. 168, to cooperate with the Union and Conference Office of Education in matters of curriculum development. Again, these are responsibilities of the board. Sometimes they'll be required, sometimes not, but I'm outlining as many as I can. To appoint 171 subcommittees as needed, such as personnel, finance, land use feasibility, etc. And then, just in case I missed anything that maybe in the future we'll need, 172, to perform such other functions as are generally recognized by the responsibility, to be the responsibility of the school board, as outlined in the NPC Education Code. So, just kind of clarifying responsibilities. I added some things that were in the Education Code. Again, 187 and 188. 187, our president doesn't serve on our personnel committee, so I got rid of that. Superintendent of Education is a position, so it should be capitalized. And currently, we don't have the president, but we do have the principal, the superintendent of education, and 3 other members. So I created that. So all of that's clarity on page 1, or section 188, line 188. Again, 188 capitalized board, 192 capitalized board because it's referring to the school board specifically. And then I believe my last one is line 220 on page 26. Again, just adding the S because hopefully there will be more than one delegate if you're having 3/4 of a vote. That'd be difficult with one person. So.
Great. You want to move those?
Sure. I move that we accept the amendments or changes to the Mount Ellis Academy Constitution bylaws.
Okay. Excellent. Is there a second on that? Wonderful. Anybody have any questions? Yes, please.
I'm Susan Graff from Trout Creek.
Hi.
Hi. I just have a quick little question on line 89. Number 1, it says determine agenda items in consultation and mail the notice. Don't you want to provide? Or does it have to be mailed?
No. Have you ever gone through a paper and written it and edited it, and then you look at it after it's published and you're like, yeah, okay, that's a good one. Can I amend my motion to add that to it?
That's fine with me.
Would that? Whoever seconded it, would you second the amended motion?
All right.
Thank you.
Second there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait, I probably should have waited.
That's all right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Lynette Hetrick from Great Falls. On line 171, could you explain that one more time? I don't think I quite understood what you said.
Oh, okay. So the board has the right to appoint subcommittees to go and do research. So in other words, like the finance committee oversees the finances. We don't have the ability to make decisions, but we make recommendations to the board. And so the board has the power to appoint subcommittees. So it's just in here. That's all. It wasn't in there before. It was nebulous under what is now line 172. I just specified that because, the joy of Adventism is we love our subcommittees. Mm-hmm. So, and they serve a purpose. So that's all that's clarifying.
Excellent. Good.
Hello, big boss.
Dennis Plubel, Delegate at Large. Thank you, Dane, for crafting something that is more closely aligned with the full description of duties for the board and for yourself, as is outlined in the NPUC Education Code. So I just stand to commend the work and that I will be voting in favor of this motion. I do, however, as an educator, can't leave without giving you some homework. Line 44. The entire list is about how the program impacts students. The amendment that you're suggesting is how you're going to impact the program, which then inherently would impact students. So your homework between now and 4 years from now is to get that to state, how are you going to inculcate that in the students? Thank you.
All right. Good. Thank you, Dennis.
Renee Young, Delegate at Large. Line 209. Dane, we missed one more little. The it should probably be if.
If.
Great. Thank you, teacher extraordinaire. That's
Just
perfect.
to let you know, this went through a committee. So I will take full responsibility since I'm standing up here, but we as a committee looked over this and, yeah, praise the Lord.
It's all right. Those are good changes. Good changes. All right. Ready to vote? We'll go ahead and we don't have a motion for that. Did you create one? We can just do, let's just do it by hand. Forget the 45 seconds. Are we okay, ready to vote? Are we ready to accept them as amended? Raise your hand. Any opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dane. Can you stay here just for a moment? I'm going to invite. And Dennis, can we ask you to come forward as well?
So you're not part of the group that has the privilege of being voted in at constituency, but we would be remiss if we didn't have a prayer of dedication and confirmation for you as well.
Do I get flowers?
No flowers.
We don't have flowers. I'm going to ask Dennis Pluvel to offer that prayer. If you wouldn't
Thank you.
mind.
Let's bow our heads. Father God, we are here today assembled in a place that is just no ordinary piece of real estate. This is a place that's been hallowed by your presence. Amen. This is holy ground. What a privilege it is for us, each one, to be co-owners and colleagues of yours. But Lord, we recognize that it's yours. And so we ask right now that you'll continue to bathe our hearts with your Holy Spirit, that we will join together in finding a way to continue to minister for your children. You have brought to us a new leader this year. He has enthusiasm, he has energy, he has an interest in doing what is best for you and your children in Montana. Continue to put your hands over Dane and each one of his staff members. May each one know that you care about them, and they in turn will bring all your children to the Lord. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dane.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Going to invite Brother Jenkins up here, please. Look at our credential and license report.
So in your booklet, if you can turn to page 50, you will find the credential and license report. In our bylaws, the Board of Directors is given the authority to approve those, and today this just comes as a report, a recommendation of sorts from the Board of Directors, our ministerial licenses and so forth that you see there in the credential and license report. And so, Mr. Chairman, I would just move that we receive this report that's found on page 50.
And I think with the correction, correct, of, do we want to go to that next? With the correction of the, because I think we had, in addition, because we had left.
Oh, yes, John Whitcomb's name is
And
added
on the
there.
screen, yes.
Yes, and on the screen.
Yeah. We had left out a minister, so we placed them on there. There's just one missing on there, but we have it on the screen for you. Yeah. And it was not intentional. We love our pastors. It was just a mistake. So we're voting this as, and this is the standard that they do during constituency for the next 4 years, just to recognize all of these and then to be able to give them the proper credentials. So is there a second to the motion? All right. Any questions? I guess we'll do our 45 seconds, or should we just vote it? Now, you're okay with the hand? Do we see in favor? Raise your hand. Any opposed? It's carried. I think we like the 30-second as well, so some of these we can just go forward. Okay? All right.
All right, I would like to invite Steve Kreitner to come forward with me, and you'll want to turn in your booklet back to our bylaws for the Montana Conference. And that begins on page 29 in your booklets. And I will just let you know I am very privileged to be a part of a very good bylaws committee. And when you think about constituency meetings and where we might get bogged down occasionally, it happens, as Elder Friedman mentioned earlier, with the these and the thous sometimes of bylaws. And so I am more than thankful today for Steve Kreitner, who is on 3 different bylaw committees in our union and knows these things very well, and he is going to lead us through the changes that we have in our booklet here in the Montana bylaws. So, Steve.
Thank you. So I have to start with just saying that if we get out early, you can thank Dane, because there's nothing that makes a lawyer sweat more than having a non-lawyer present bylaws from changes from a different set of bylaws so excellently and rapidly. That was wonderful. So about half of the things I was going to say are now off of what I'm going to say. So thank Dane for getting the lawyer to talk less. Yes, yeah. So I am a lawyer. I'm not standing here as legal counsel for the conference. I'm just a layperson member of the bylaws committee. And whenever it's time to talk about bylaws, probably the lawyer on the committee is the only person who's secretly wishing that they get to be the one to talk about the bylaws. So that's why I got asked to present this today, the proposed changes. Set that down there. Okay. So I'd call your attention to page 29. We really don't put up pictures of the bylaws because if you're going to get a whole page, it's going to be so small. So I just call your attention to the packets. And for those of you who took advantage of the QR code at the beginning, you can also look at them on your phone or your tablets. So before we get started, so I just wanted to just make a quick comment about the bylaws committee. Our current bylaws specify that the bylaws committee is comprised of 5 lay persons, then the vice president for administration from the Montana Conference, which is Jim, and then the vice president or the executive secretary of the North Pacific Union. And the reason for that is because then you have the representatives of the constituents with the support and coordination from both the conference and the union, because the purpose of bylaws is to ensure the smooth operation of the Montana Conference, to make sure that when a decision needs to be made, you have the proper board or committee that is in place to be able to make those decisions so that they can be made by the correct people at the correct time, and then also so that it is in coordination with the union and the division and the general conference. So we all work together as a single unit of component groups. Okay, so the type of changes that the bylaws committee is making includes simple dates, typos, grammatical corrections, changes to permit virtual meetings. We do not mandate virtual meetings in these proposed changes. It merely allows for virtual meetings when that is in the best interest of the constituency and the conference. We have a couple of proposed changes for committee memberships, which include the Board of Directors as well as the Board of Education. We have a change relative to once every 2 years evaluation of the officers. We have a change regarding the section that involved the radio station for the academy. And those are the types of changes. So with that summary, what I'd like to do is just go through the changes like Dane did. I'll do my best to be as quick about it as he was. And then at the end, we'll make a motion. hopefully have a second, and then we'll take questions or proposed changes. So starting on page 29, line 10, or lines 5 and 10, that's just changing the date from the last set of bylaws, and that's worthwhile stating is that the bylaws committee started with the version of the bylaws that was voted into place by the constituency back in 2017. So there's a grammatical correction on line 10. Lines 24 through 26, since we are proposing additional provisions to allow for virtual meetings, the committee felt that it was important to define what presence or present meant, that it not only included people who were in person, but people who were attending via electronic means. So then the next changes that I see is line 107. So we wanted to add that the delegates at large included members of the executive committees of the General Conference, North American Division, and North Pacific Union. That is consistent with their bylaws and is just more specific to say that it is representatives from those committees rather than just from the General Conference or just the North American Division, etc. All right, so then on page 32, lines 144 through 152, we put a provision that is being put, also is being inserted in the bylaws for the union, the division, and the General Conference that allows for the board of directors to postpone a constituency meeting. That helps us to avoid a situation like today where we had to postpone in 2021 because of COVID, and then we have to vote in the approval for the exemption. It just gives the ability for the board of directors to postpone a meeting in the event that becomes necessary. Lines 170 through 174 states that the board of directors may is not required to, so keep in mind this is permissive. For all the people on the bylaws committee, for all of the conference executive officials, all the constituents I've talked to, all of us want to have in-person meetings for the constituency session. That is the preference. But in the event that that's not possible, the board of directors may vote to authorize that the regular or special sessions could convene by electronic means. Lines 205 through 207, just a couple of corrections to make it read more clearly. Lines 209 through 214 and 216 through 218. So in preparation for a regular constituency meeting, there is a set of 3 committees called the organizing committees, and it's from each of the districts or the sections of the Montana Conference, the East, the Middle, and the West. I don't know if that's the correct term. Is that right? Central. And so the way the bylaws have been written is that there should be proportional representation for each of the sections or districts, so that depending upon the population of each district, that the representation of the 20 members who come from the membership of the local churches, that each district gets its proportional number of delegates. To be honest, the way that it read before was quite confusing. Jim and I spent a few minutes on the phone trying to come up with the calculation. Granted, we're not math majors, but it was just confusing. So the bylaws committee decided to propose these changes because we believe that it reads a bit more clearly. So it just changes the way that the calculation is explained. So then on lines 216 through 218, the way that the bylaws read before is that it basically, where it says no church shall have more than one delegate on the nominating committee, that was preventing us from situations where one church could not have a delegate who is a layperson and also a delegate who is a pastor. And in some churches, That's the only choice you have. So the way that it read before prevented that church from getting its proportionate share of delegates. So we revised that by deleting that sentence and proposing the sentence that's in the end. No church shall have more than one delegate in the group of 20 local church delegates. If you have questions about this equation, we can talk about it in the question and comment section. Okay, lines 263 through 267 basically allows for committees to meet virtually as well. So there are some committees where in the past, it could have been a 60-minute meeting by Zoom, but somebody from Kalispell or Eastern Montana would have to drive all the way to Bozeman to be in person. So this is for the convenience of committee members when that is in the committee's best interest. All right, page 35, lines 286 down through 293. Typically, in most conferences, all of the members of the executive committee or the administration, I should say, are generally on what's usually called the executive committee, but in Montana's case is called the board of directors. So the changes we made to this were, first of all, on line 293, we changed 2 to 3 conference executive officers would be a part of the board of directors. And because Montana's bylaws has a principle where all of the committees, as well as the delegates in regular session, there is a requirement that there has to be a majority of laypersons. So because we added a conference official on line 289, we also added a layperson. So that increases the total number of members on that committee from 15 to 17, 9 of which would be laypersons. Okay, lines 318 through 324. This allows the board of directors to also meet virtually. It does not require it, but it does permit it. Lines 366 through 370. This was clarification of how this read. To be clear that the officers of the conference shall be elected by a majority of the delegates or as otherwise provided herein. And then, because on the next page we added some language relative to the evaluation or the possibility of the termination for cause of an officer, we added some language which basically says, there on line 367 and 368, the officers shall hold their offices as defined in Article 12 unless they resign or are terminated for cause. And then any vote regarding an officer's termination would be held by secret ballot. So then on page 37, lines 382 through 394, so the union and some of the other divisions within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they're adding language to provide for officers to have a periodic evaluation relative to their performance. So we are adding language there that basically requires that the board of directors, under the chairmanship of the NPUC president or the president's designee, shall evaluate and monitor the performance of the officers of the conference every 2 years. And it's to coincide with the quadrennial session. And then we added a section relative to termination for cause. So in the unfortunate circumstance that there is a reason for the board of directors to consider the termination of an officer, there's language which sets out some of the possibilities, which gives guidance to the board of directors relative to what type of conduct should be considered relative to termination of an officer. Okay, so then going on to page 39, lines 496 down through 522, we are proposing a change to the membership of the Board of Education. That's on line 504. we would propose to add the conference vice president for administration. And the reason for that proposal is that the vice president for administration is in charge of HR issues, and frequently the Board of Education is dealing with HR issues. So it's important for the human resources official in the conference to be on the Board of Education. The second change we made was on, or we are proposing, was on lines 497 and 498 to require that at least 2 of the members who are on the Board of Education to be a person who is a parent with a child in a Montana Conference school during at least some portion of their term. And the reason for that proposal was those are people who have a vested interest in what's going on in the school, so it makes sense that they would be on this board. Then the last change we are proposing is on line 513, where we are adding a layperson to maintain the majority of laypersons' membership on this particular committee. So the total number for this committee would be 15 people, and then 8 would be laypersons. Okay? Moving on to, back on that page on 524, and then on the next page on 528, we're just doing some renumbering changes, proposing some renumbering changes. Then on line 40 or page 41, line 618, going on to the next page through line 629. So the Montana Conference bylaws had a provision relative to maintaining the location of Mount Ellis Academy within a certain set of reference points. And the reason for that, and this happened long before I moved to Montana, is my understanding is there was the idea that the academy was going to have a radio station. Jim did a little bit of research, talked to some folks in the conference, and that idea really never materialized. There is not a radio station. So from that perspective, it made sense to propose that we remove that section from the bylaws. And it's important to note that taking it out of the bylaws doesn't prevent Mount Ellis from ever having a radio station. That would be something they could put into their bylaws or to the school's bylaws. It really doesn't need to be in here, so that's a second reason for us to propose to remove it. All right. One correction of our corrections on line 149. So that should read Article 18, not 13. So we left a Roman numeral V out of that. So we'll go ahead and make that correction. And then the last changes that I see are on line 691 and 695, where we're just updating the date that this version of the bylaws would be voted in. So with that summary, I would propose, or I would move, that the constituent session approve the proposed changes as presented.
All right. Thank you. Is there a second to this? All right. Any questions on the bylaws? Yes, ma'am. Well, come on. Just line up. It's okay.
Hi. Donna Bacon from the Butte Church. On Section 3, number B, membership of the Board of Education, I don't know if you just misspoke. It says the Board of Education shall be composed of the following persons, at least 2 of which must be a person that is a parent of a child in one of the Montana Conference's schools during that person's tenure. Mm-hmm. And you stated at least during part of the person's tenure. And to me, this one says during that person's tenure, it's the entire, I read that as the entire tenure of that person. So I think that needs clarification.
Okay. So do you have a proposed language change?
Oh, yeah, if you truly want it to be just, at least part, that they have a student, at least part of their tenure, if that could be stated at least during part of that person's, part of that person's tenure. If you could just put part of
Okay.
in that sentence, then it would correlate with what you stated.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion.
Thank you, Donna.
So I think she proposed an amendment to the proposed changes. So how about I move that would be an amendment to my motion to add on line 498 during part of that person's tenure. Does that work? Okay.
Okay. So there were so many hands to second. Somebody pick one. Who seconded? Back there. Okay. Now we're okay. All right. Thank you, Andre. Yes, sir.
My name is Bobby Cheever. I'm from Butte, and this may seem like a small thing, but you went to the trouble to put in the present or presence definition. And being a former IT person, and I'm sure nobody else has ever experienced difficulty with IT stuff, what is the criteria for the attendance if someone or several someones are disconnected during the meeting? Is there a percentage of time required for them to be considered present, or how is that to be dealt with?
Good.
Very good question. Thank you. So on lines 170 through 174, part of the proposed language relative to allowing virtual session requires that all attendees can hear each other at the same time and participate in the proceedings. So that's a requirement of the meeting that all of the participants have to be able to hear. So from an administrative perspective, I would sort of defer to you as to how you would.
Yeah, I think we'll follow the same rules, and it can help from NPUC, but I think the normal meetings is that you have to have a quorum, and then once a quorum is started, it's typical that people have to go to other appointments and they'll leave and so forth. So we always do it the starting point. If we have a quorum and they're there and interacting, even if they have to go or they get disconnected, they usually can get connected again by telephone if they're doing it through computer or so forth. So it's that first quorum that we make sure we have, and then after that, it's okay. We find a way to try to keep them connected. Yes. Good question, though. Yes, sir. Sorry, over here.
That's okay. Brian Geary, delegate at large. I guess, sorry, do you want me over there?
No, you're good. Go ahead. You're
Just
good.
ringing a little. So they're on 496 through 498. I don't know exactly how it works, but I'd make a motion to remove the change. And the reason is the Board of Education is not there to push its own will, but to represent the delegates of the conference, the constituency of the conference in matters of Board of Ed. And by requiring, there's only 4 lay people, as I read it here, in requiring 2 of those lay people to have children currently enrolled in a school. I'm sorry, but by the time you hit, I don't know, let's call it 45, we've alienated a huge portion of our constituency, and we're not here to push the will of a parent. We're here to represent the constituency. And I look at this group, and there's a bunch of people younger than me, and there's a few that are older, and I would hate to alienate their wisdom at being able to serve on this board and be considered for that board. So I'd make a motion to remove the changes on 496 through 498.
Well, I think we have a motion on the floor, so we can't make another motion.
Unless it's a motion to amend.
Okay.
So if that's what he's doing,
Okay, so we took care of the other one. So there would have to be a motion to amend, and then it's going to be we have to have a second to that, and then there has to be a majority vote to do that, and we'll have some discussion on that as well. Correct? Okay.
Yeah, so pardon me in my wording. I would.
That's
make
sure,
that,
no problem.
a
So you're
motion to
making
amend
that motion. So is there support for that motion? And then we'll have discussion on it. Okay, I did hear a second on that. Okay. Okay, so now we get to discuss it. So anyone that wants to speak specifically to this motion, all right, so if you want to speak specifically to the parent issue, then please, sure.
So do you mind if I make a quick comment?
Yes.
Real quick. So just to clarify, currently as written with the proposed changes, there are 8 laypersons. So those 8 laypersons would be on 511, 2 laypersons from the board of directors. 513 and 514 are 4 other laypersons, with the exception of spouses of teachers, executive officers, and departmental directors. 516, 1 school teacher from the elementary level, because the definition of layperson, which is on 532 and 533, is a layperson is any member of the conference other than pastors, executive officers, and departmental directors. So line 516 would be a layperson, and then 520 would also be a layperson, the Montana layperson on the NPUC Board of Education. And then the last thing is that the proposed language does not require those 2 people be laypersons. It's just 2 persons. So if the conference president has a child in the school, so I guess you won't because your children are too old, but if one of the non-lay persons has a child, that can count. So it does not have to be a lay person. So just yeah.
So I apologize for my misreading of that then. I guess vote it down if that doesn't make any more sense then. But you know, don't you're not hurting my feelings if it goes up or down. I misread that some, and so the picture that I presented is not entirely accurate to what we previously discussed.
Sure.
Thanks, Brian. Say that again.
Yeah.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay. And I saw the seconder back here, so he's withdrawing his motion. Do you want to support the withdrawal of his motion? Okay, all right. So we've withdrawn that motion now. Okay. Back to the main motion, all right? Come forward.
Laren Stafford from the Eureka Church. I'm just wanting to say that I think it's a good idea that 2 people on the board be parents, at least 2. And the comment that was made before that they only have to be on there for part of the term, if they're the only 2 that have children in the school, then it seems like it would be better if they could be replaced if they no longer have a child in the school, so that the board is represented by parents.
Okay. Thank you for speaking to that. And that'll come up in the vote here in a few moments.
I wanted to speak to that very same issue.
Your name and...
I apologize.
It's okay.
Well, that's not my name, but...
Pastor Theron, what is your name?
Get my packet and read it all. Here.
It's okay.
I'm Theron Stadden. I'm the interim pastor for the Great Falls Shoto District.
Okay.
And I am speaking to the issue of part of the term that they must be a parent of a child. That does the same thing the original wording does, it seems to me, by being too specific. It would be nicer maybe if it said at least part of the term. So it could be full term, it could be a part of the term. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And
so the challenge we get into in all this is the wordsmithing piece, which is amazing because that's different people see it in different ways. So we just have to decide how far we want to go on and making sure the intent. I think we have to make sure we understand the intent. And if it's the same intent, then we're okay with the wording. But if it changes the intent, then we'll want to look at that. But go ahead.
Well, technically it changes the intent.
Okay.
So maybe I should make this as an amendment to the motion. I would like to amend that the word at least be added in there for the purpose of widening the criterion for that particular person being on that board. If they have a parent, if they are a parent of a child in the school part of the time, part of the term, or even all the term. It's okay.
By adding at least in there.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it becomes more inclusive as opposed to specifically only for part of the term, and
Okay.
that's it, you're done.
Okay.
Make sense?
So can we make an amendment to the amendment? Because that's what it would be, correct? Okay. So this would be an amendment to the amendment and putting at least in there. Is there a second to that? Do you understand that? So there's a second to that, all right? So now we need to speak specifically to that at least part. Is there anyone that wants to speak specifically to the at least? Yes, come forward.
Kimberly Bakavoy, delegate at large, and that is very loud. A thought just came to my mind with recent COVID issues and concerns and such, and that is regarding the population of our students. If you have a small school and your Adventist kids graduate out and you only have non-Adventist students and parents in the school, has that been considered? That's actually happened in a school that we were in. And so during the COVID year and a half, 2 years, the only students that were in the school were all non-Adventist.
Sure. I'm not sure it affects directly, Kimberly, because the Board of Ed is chosen as a larger group from all over Montana. So I think we're okay with, because there's so many schools, we could choose.
I just thought that might create a precedent that hadn't been considered.
Okay. Thank you. That's good. Appreciate that. So anybody else to speak to the at least part? Because we could actually just, I think we could, no, we can't. We need to vote. Are we voting this all through as one? Or do we vote the amendment? Just vote the amendment. Okay. So anyone else to speak? Are we good with that, or we move forward with that vote? Do you understand what's being voted on right now? Okay. Would you like to explain it, or do you want me to explain it? Okay.
Yes. So let's see if I can explain this. So I proposed, or I moved, that we accept the bylaws changes as proposed by the bylaws committee. Then I, pursuant to the conversation by the nice lady in the back, I amended my motion to add part of that person's tenure. And so we're going to have to go back to that, right? Yep. So then we have an amendment to my amendment, which was to add at least before part of. So that's what we're voting on right now. And the way that I would characterize it is that if you are in favor of the amendment to amend, you would raise your hand yes. And if you are in opposition to it, you would raise your hand no.
Correct. Excellent.
Yes.
Step up to the mic, Dean.
Dane Bailey, delegate at large. Are we voting right now just on the at least, or
yes.
on your? Okay, so I want to deal with your amendment part, not the at least.
All right.
Yep.
So let's just go straight and not worry about we're doing hands. You okay with that? You ready to vote that? So we're voting the at least part. All in favor to amend the at least for the part, raise your hand. Anybody opposed to that? Okay. So it does pass by majority. All right. So now we're done with that amendment. And now we're coming back to
the amendment, which would now be
at least part of. Okay,
that
so we're ready to vote on that. Are you wanting to speak to that?
The whole amendment. Well, I don't know. I'm
something different.
To be.
Okay, something different. All right, so hold on to that just a moment, and then yes.
I wanted to speak to the amendment.
Okay, sure.
Dane Bailey again. So if you have that, I'm an appointed member of that board. My kids are in school this year. They're graduating. So I'm a lifetime appointee as long as I'm the principal. So I would actually constitute, according to the way you're rewriting this, one of the two parents in the school, even though I may be 10 years, let's say I'm employed here 10 years.
I hope it's 20, but go ahead.
But if I'm here 10 years, if I'm here 20 years, I would still count as a parent, even though my kids went to school there 20 years ago.
Yes, is that how we're understanding the practical change of that? Because that's important for you to know. Do you understand that? So it's important to know that it's possible we go on 15, 20 years, kids were in there, and they're still on, except I think there's term limits, aren't there, on the Board of Ed?
So you're just trying to widen the gap by how fast you got through your bylaws and how slow I'm going to get through these bylaws? Good job.
All right, brother.
Yeah,
To me, looking at the Board of Education, I want people on the Board of Education that support Adventist education. I mean, really, that's one of the important things to me in watching how it's functioned over the years. Because of that, I like the way you wrote it. To constantly have 2 people on the board, of which 2 of them have parents that are currently in the schools in Montana. That's 2 people out of a board of 15. That's not asking too much.
Okay.
And that means that, as Dane says, even though he had 2 children for 2 years, and he's continued to be on the board for the next 8 years, he would constitute fulfilling the role with just part of. So if someone goes off the board or their children transfer out, they should be able to step down and allow another parent to come on the board that has interest in education.
Okay.
So a couple of responses to that really quickly. So the first response was, or the first thought is, the goal of the bylaws committee in making this proposal is in line with what the previous speaker said, which was that we want people who are supporting Adventist education to be on the board. And part of that is because they're supporting it, but part of it is because they actually have current relevant experience, right? So they know what's going on in our schools today as they're meeting. Not today, but generally speaking. That being said, my guess is, or my prediction, and I think this is reasonable to say, is that we're always going to have way more than 2 people. And even if somebody like Dane, who's been here for 20 years, because we want him here for 20 years, right? Even if he's on the committee because he's the academy principal, and his children are long in the rearview mirror from having presently attended, of course we still want him on there, but he doesn't necessarily have to be counted, and I don't think we would ever really need to count him, because there will be people that we can choose from, the 2 lay persons, the 4 other lay persons, the 1 elementary teacher, and the Montana lay person. So we have 8 people that we can choose from in the event that none of the other ex officio positions currently have children. So I think it's going to work out, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you for clarifying that. So we're still on the amendment piece. Do you understand what we want to need to vote now? Of the 2, are you want to speak to that?
Same subject, I think.
Okay, great. Please,
Greg
name
Allen,
and
Mount Ellis.
Okay.
I'm on the other side of this coin, where I think there needs to be more representation of the lay members as parents of students. There's a lot of conference officials on here. We can call teachers, lay people, pastors, but they still get their check from the Montana Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. And that to me is a fundamental issue. The customer is not being represented adequately here. And I would actually argue that the one from the Board of Directors and 2 of the lay members on the Board of Education should have students in school. I go the opposite way from the last person who suggested the change, because it doesn't say lay people, and I think it's very important to get the lay person's voice in these matters outside of people who are employed by the conference.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
So
I make a motion to that change.
Well, so stay up here for just a second, because I'm going to characterize what you said, and I want you to correct me in case I'm wrong. So I would so the current motion is the amendment to the original motion to add at least part of. So we're not voting on all of the proposed changes from the bylaws committee, just the additional or the proposed additional language, at least part of. So Greg, I would take your comment as in opposition to the entire motion of having this, and potentially maybe down the road of adding laypersons to what the bylaws committee had originally proposed. Is that correct? Meaning you would rather it says at least 2 laypersons? Did I hear you correctly or no?
Or you change 511 to say 1 of which has a student, and 5, 13, and 14
I see what you're
to
saying.
say the same thing. Half of whom, or 2 of which. You could remove it up there, it really wouldn't matter because it takes conference employees out of the equation.
Okay.
So I think we need to go ahead and vote. I think it's a little separate, but I think we need to vote the amendment 1 first, and then we'll come back to this as we're moving forward. Are we all right with that? So we need to vote this at least, and you've heard the two sides. So I think we're okay to. I think it's appropriate that we need to do the clickers if we can do that. I think that would be appropriate for this. So let's write in the motion as. Do you want to clarify?
Yeah. So it would be the recommended action or the motion that is currently on the floor is to approve the amendment to the recommended changes on lines 496 through 498.
I'm looking at Lauren since he's typing back there. So it won't be what's up on the screen at the moment. That was earlier, but we're doing an amendment. So you okay with that, Lauren?
Wouldn't this be an amendment as well, though?
Yes, but it's a little different, though. So we have to vote this one because it's not the exact. Am I correct in understanding that? Yes. Yes. Go ahead. He's working on it. We're trying to get it on the screen.
So to clarify, the motion on the floor is to add on line 498 at least part of that person's tenure. So adding the words at least part of to the proposed changes on lines 496 through 498. So we'll vote yes or no to add at least part of, and if that passes, then we'll have a vote on do we want to accept the modified changes in their entirety to these 3 lines.
Okay, so the first vote is just the at least.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So Lauren's working on that. Come up to the mic. Clarify here. And I didn't have you state your name either, so that's okay. State your names.
Jay Jutsi, Mount Ellis Church. I thought we already voted on the at least have. We voted that and it passed by hand vote. So are you re-voting that?
I don't think we did.
No.
Did we?
No.
We did not yet. We didn't,
Okay.
Jay.
No.
Okay. We
Yeah.
did sorry.
Yeah.
Two
Well,
of us talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there was a motion to approve these changes on these 3 lines. Then there was an amendment to add part of. Then there was an amendment to add the amendment that's at least part of. So we voted to add at least. Now the motion we're voting on is do we want to add at least part of?
Whether we should take it all out and go back to the beginning. That's what we're voting, correct?
So this is why Andre and I are probably the only 2 people, unless we have lawyers in the audience, we're probably the only 2 people who enjoy this, right? Okay.
May your tribe increase, brother. It's
That's
all right.
right.
It's all right. Okay, so here we go. Approve the amendment to the recommended changes to add lines 498, at least part of, to proposed changes in lines 496 to 498. Okay. Do we know what we're voting? That's the important piece here. If right now, if you vote down, that means it'll take it all out. Right? Is that correct? Am I explaining that correctly?
If this is voted down, we'll take at least part of out.
Out.
And then we'll have the vote as to whether you want the proposed changes without at least part of to add it. So
Correct.
Right now this is on just, do you want to add at least part of to the proposed changes?
Correct. Yes.
And it looks like we already voted.
Did you vote already? You guys are way ahead of us. That's great. So yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're going back. We're going back.
We are making Dane look better and better and better. Dane, do you want to come up? Yeah. So do we want to try that one more time?
I think
Because
so.
I think there was only 164
There was like
votes.
164. It didn't seem like everybody got to vote on that.
Okay, so let's try that one more time.
And to make sure they know what if they're pressing yes, then no, go ahead. If they press yes, does that mean they're taking it off?
No. If
Or
you
that means
press
the opposite?
yes, you are adding at least part of.
Okay. So yes is to keep it, no is to take that part away. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so say that again, because that's important.
Okay. Voting yes on this motion will add at least part of to the proposed changes. Voting no will not add at least part of to the proposed changes.
And it goes back to the original then?
Yes.
Do you understand that?
That is correct.
If you do no, it goes back to the original. If you do yes, we will add that part of.
Well, to be clear, it goes back to the original proposed changes, not the original version of the bylaws.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do we have the motion up here? It's
not yet. It's coming. I'm going to do this again.
Mr. Chairman, who's on first?
Oh, I won't. I don't even know. They're not playing ball right now. Okay, and then is there something you have to, there you go, 30 seconds, and start it now. There we go.
Jim is sitting back there thinking, I am so glad I asked Steve to do this. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for your patience in this.
Okay.
So we've added at least part of. So now the current motion on the floor well, so now that I'm thinking about it, so the motion on the floor was to add all of the changes as proposed by the Bylaws Committee. With this amended, or this amendment, at least part of, is added to this. So we will continue on now with discussion about the motion to approve the proposed changes as presented from the Bylaws Committee.
Correct. So we've now made a change, and that's part of going to be the final vote.
Correct.
We've made that change, and that's how we'll go from this point out. Now, I would like as chairman to say, we could literally go on for hours and hours and hours of tweaking every little piece in here. So let it be major things. If it's major philosophical pieces that you are disturbed about in this, then please come up. But otherwise, you understand we could go a very long time. So let's just keep moving, but just understand that this can get bogged down very quickly. Brother Greg, say it again.
So we're back to membership in B, 496, but
yes,
with that change, I think the easiest way, obviously, you can't reconstitute the board of directors and who has to be on that. The easiest thing to do would be 513, that those two of those four individuals should have or must have meet the criteria in B and not be conference officials or people employed by the MPUC General Conference or or Montana Conference.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so my understanding is you're talking about the addition to line 513 to require that at least two of those laypersons have children.
For some, or if or when, or
correct.
However we changed it just a second ago.
Sure. So my thought on that is that when it comes to composing a committee like this, there are two things we're sort of talking about right now, one expressly, one implicitly. So the first one is, by the fact that we have 9 laypersons on the committee, which is a majority, or it's more than 50%, that's the conflict of interest issue that I heard you reference, that we want to make sure that laypersons have a majority, so that persons who have conflicts, such as the conference executive officers, pastors, and departmental directors who have the ability to vote in salaries and hiring and firing and so on, you want to make sure that that they are protected from not having that conflict of interest, and that the constituency is protected to make sure that what is voted in place is in the best interest of the constituency. So that's one issue which I believe we have taken care of by having 9 laypersons. The other issue we're talking about is making sure that there is representation on the Board of Education relative to people who are supporting Adventist education and who have children in schools during at least part of their tenure, so that they have relevant recent experience and knowledge as to what's going on. That, I think, would be taken care of regardless of whether that person is a conference official or whether that person is a lay person. So last comment is, let's say you have a conference official who is a parent of a child at least during part of their tenure. If there's a vote that they're trying to accomplish which involves their conflict of interest, having laypersons be the people who are parents doesn't take care of the conflict of interest issue. The 9 members on the committee do. So that's just the way I see it. You're welcome to disagree with that.
Yeah, I think the representation issue is larger than that, because you go down this list, who's not paid by the Adventist Church and whose education is not paid for by the Adventist Church.
Right.
Give me the number here. It's 6.
Yes.
6 people.
Yes.
Out of a board of 15, 6 of them, and we're not requiring, because technically teachers most likely in this conference, if you ask conference employees who have children in Adventist education, if you apply the rule that we added, would be all of them.
Mm-hmm.
That would require none of the lay people to have children in our Adventist schools. That should not be.
Sure.
Never should be.
Well, and to that point, and again, this is a little bit of a different issue that we can deal with if we want to, is in the 2017 constituency session, there was a proposal to amend the definition of layperson that was more in line of what you're saying, which it was nobody who's paid by the conference, and that was voted down. So we have the definition of layperson that we have today, and to try to remember the arguments for why it was voted down, and why the current language was kept, was that it had to do with people who are teachers. So one elementary teacher, which is, so keep in mind that of the 8 people that are identified currently as lay persons, only one of them is paid by the conference. That would be on line 516. So 520 is a lay person, which may or may not be somebody who's paid, I guess. So I guess you could say that all of these people could be paid if all of them were teachers. But that's the definition we're working with right now. And so for us to get into...
Change my motion to say who are not teachers as defined in the layperson, to say,
Sure.
I think it's very important that parents who are not employed by the church in any way, shape, or form should have a voice on this board.
Right.
Not implied, actual voices on this board. And the way we're talking about this, it feels very much like we're trying to get around that, and that bothers me, because I don't think it ever should be that way.
Sure.
Having put 5 kids through and 6 exchange students, I think parents should have a little more voice in what's being said here. So my motion would be line 513 to exclude. It says that with exception of spouses of teachers, executive officers, 2 of those must have students in school, and those lay people cannot be teachers in the Adventist system. That would be my motion of a change.
Okay. Do you want to restate that motion to see if we could get a second? Or
Sure. All right, so let me see if I can restate this. It's Greg, right? Yeah. So the motion is to amend the motion In that, on lines 513 and 514, it would read, and help me through this, 4 other laypersons, with the exception of spouses of teachers, comma, executive officers, comma, officers and departmental directors. And then the way that I would say it is another hyphen, at least 2 of which
are lay people not employed by the church, or the conference would exclude teachers.
Are not employees of the Montana Conference.
That's
yes?
probably the clearest.
So I didn't include lay people because, again, we have that definition.
Right.
So we wouldn't want to contradict ourselves. So let me see if I can state it again. The motion is to amend the motion. In that, 513 would be amended to read 4 other laypersons, hyphen, with the exception of spouses or teachers, comma, executive officers, comma, officers and departmental directors, hyphen, at least 2 of which are not employees of the Montana Conference.
And have kids in Adventist education in Montana.
Just thinking that through. So if we add that at least 2 of which must be a person that is the parent, so that language, then essentially the way we have it written with 496 and through 498 is we're always going to have those 2 people from lines 513 and 14. We will never have them from line 511 or 520.
I mean, because you're going to have those anyway. I think the importance of a parent. So
sure.
I don't know if the other comes out, but we have that partial time issue,
sure.
or if it gets added in.
In a nutshell, you're wanting that the lay persons on the Board of Education, that 2 of them have children in Adventist school.
Correct. And not employees.
And they're not employees. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
So that's what he's making a motion about. Is that what you were trying to say? Okay.
I think so.
Yes, I believe so. What's that whole part? Yes, the child, yes. That's correct. So we need a second to that before we're going to discuss it. So is somebody good with that? Okay, so I've got my second in line here. So that now, anybody want to speak specifically to this? We're gonna go with over here, and then we'll come back. Yes, sir.
Philip Newharth, delegate at large. One question regarding the employed by the conference issue. Doesn't that bring up part-time workers, janitors? They would be disqualified from serving in those positions according to that
That's correct.
definition.
Yeah.
So did you all hear that?
So it would be all employees, whether they're part-time or full-time and so forth. Yeah. Yeah, 2 of them.
All right, so then if I'm correct right now, we're in discussion about the amendment to the motion.
It's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
my name's Natalie Jutsi. I'm representing the Manala's Church. I tried to write down what I thought he was saying on line 513 and 14. 4 other laypersons, with the exception of spouses of teachers, executive officers, and departmental directors, at least 2 of which have children at the schools and are not employed by the Montana Conference. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Okay.
Go back and get on the computer.
Yeah.
Go back and... Yes, sir. Speak to it.
Yeah, Travis Stuber, delegate at large. I understand from the gentleman what he's saying over here, and what he's trying to get at is representation from the constituents that are not employed by the conference. I understand that. From the gentleman that was just up here on this side, I think what I'm trying to propose here, what I'm saying, is there's many of us here that have been employed by the conference for a few minutes here and there. My wife, once in a while, will go down and help out at the elementary school. All of a sudden, now she's an employee. So do we want to throw in there something like full-time or something like that? I mean, I coach basketball here once in a while for the elementary school. If somebody pays me a few bucks to do that, all of a sudden now I'm not eligible, or I fall out of the Board of Education because I'm
Okay.
an employee.
Is that the intent of the person who
that
made
the
the
intent?
motion, Greg? So do you understand full-time? Can we amend, and now if the person who made the amendment, Andre, if the person who made the amendment says that that's okay to put in there, and the person that seconds says that that's okay, then we're okay. All right, so we're okay, and Jeremy, you were the second on that, so are you okay? All right, so it's a full-time. It would be full-time. Are you okay with that? All right. Okay. So we're ready to vote, except for we're going to hear from Mr. Denver. It's good.
Yeah, hello. My name is Denver Harris from the Shoto Church. And it sounds like what we're talking about adding to line 514 would be somewhat redundant with line 497, 498. I just wondered, would it be more clear and make more sense to move that wording up and add it into line 497? So then that would also allow the two lay persons from the board of directors to be included in the two people who are not conference employees and who have a parent or who are a parent of a child in the conference. So basically, it could just read on line 497, at least two of which must be a person that is not a conference employee.
Full-time.
Full-time conference employee.
Okay.
That, and then continue on, that is the parent of a child in one of the Montana conference schools.
Okay, Denver, thank you. And I think I saw Greg nodding back there that sounded good, so you understand? It's the same intent. Again, we're looking for intent. We're looking for principles of intent. So thank you. And then we would have second to that? Okay, I mean, of amending that. So that would add that. What's your thoughts?
So I guess my thoughts are, I'm just weighing the weight of my words. So my thoughts are, again, we are munging together needing to have people who have children in school during part of their tenure and conflict of interest. I think conflict of interest is handled on line 532 and 533. And so that's why the Bylaws Committee back in 2017 proposed very similar challenges. So not just for the Board of Education, but for the Board of Directors, the Articles and Bylaws Committee, the organizing committees, the Articles and Bylaws Committee. For all of those, that would include laypersons would be any layperson, or a layperson is any member of the conference other than pastors, executive officers, departmental directors, and full-time employees of the conference. So from a drafting perspective,
yes,
we are surgically changing one section without addressing that issue throughout the entire bylaws.
Correct.
And I hesitated to say that because I don't want to cause more problems. I don't want to keep you all later. But if you're asking my opinion is that it's better to amend that sort of like the Bylaws Committee proposed in 2017, and then it's taken care of everywhere, rather than just in this one place. Then on top of that, my second thought is we're going to cause a little confusion between 496 through 498 and 513 because now we have two different places where we're talking about at least two people. Right. And it's all about the law of unintended consequences. By doing the changes, we may hamstring or tie the hands of the people who are putting this committee together. It's just awkward.
Yeah. Clarification and follow-up.
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm saying is to not have any changes to 513 to
Right.
move that up. Because
Sure.
Otherwise, if you add that wording in 513, then there's no point of the additional language in 497 and 498.
Sure.
Because it is redundant then.
Could we move the language from 497 and 498 to 513 and just encompass it all in 513?
Hang on, Greg, 1 second, because we had Jerry here, and then we'll come to you. Just a second. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jay Jutsi, Mount Ellis.
Jay.
Please don't get into 532. And I'll say why. That's something that needs to be, if you want to do it at the next session, because on our nominating committee and our definition of lay people and all the people we've elected
That's
already
correct.
would completely change all of those rules.
Sure.
And make everything we've done today already invalid. So I would not want to mess any farther. Make some minor changes here is my recommendation.
Sure.
And let's forget about 532 until if we need to change it later.
And just so
Very
everybody's
helpful.
clear on that, that it's putting teachers, that's the big one, is full-time employees was voted in 2017 to be lay people. Teachers were considered lay persons, even though they're employed by the conference. And so that was voted, that was made at that point to be that they are actually considered lay persons in 2017. Is that correct?
No.
Full-time? Okay,
No.
I'm sorry. Then please.
Well, wait.
I think, correct?
Yes.
Because they're not in
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Thank
they're
you.
not in there. Teachers are not in there. And so that needs to be a discussion in 4 years. But if we change it now, we mess up all kinds of things. So let's make that another 4 years fun part.
So
Yes,
to be
Greg.
clear, the nominating committee has already met, so if we made that change in 532, we would have to have the nominating committee potentially go back and do some renominations.
It's a mess.
Very, very good point.
Yep.
So I think that to what Denver said, we could move this all to 513.
Okay.
Everything from that's in under B. You could say that two of which may not be teachers. That allows two of the other lay people to be teachers, but
Okay.
two of which must not be and must have kids in. So it would be double on the two of which would not be this group and would also have kids.
Okay.
So you're talking about removing the proposed lines on 496 through 498, yes?
Moving them. Yeah, moving them to 514.
So
and then
taking
add-
them out of there and then adding them to 514,
Yes.
okay?
And say two of which may not be teachers, then it doesn't affect the lay person. It just says two of those must have kids and may not be teachers. Well,
Okay.
There's room for two teachers to be on there.
Sure.
But-
Should I try to state that?
Yes, and I think let's finish this up here, if that's okay. And I think being that we understand the intent, so let's figure out how to just put that intent in. We'll trust you to say what do you feel is the best intent, and let's go forward in that vote, up or down.
Okay.
All right.
State it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we would take the language out of 496 through 497 that has been proposed, and we move it down to 513.14, which would read, "Four other lay persons, with the exceptions of spouses of teachers, full-time conference employees, executive officers, and departmental directors, and two of whom must be a person that is the parent of a child in one of the Montana Conference schools during at least part of that person's tenure on the Board of Education."
All right. Sounds specific. Okay, and we're not
Yeah.
going to even have you, I think we get the intent.
Yeah.
And so if you're comfortable with the intent, let's go ahead and, Lauren, are you able to do that? He's saying no. Okay. So you understand the intent. Are you comfortable with going with a majority vote just by hand? No? Okay, because I think there's some.
Okay.
Can we just put up, can you just say to vote, thank you. Vote the current motion on the floor. Thank you. That'll be simple. And then we'll be able to just do that. Yeah. Actually, the clicker thing is in the back up there, so. Reflecting it off the screen, great. The receiver's back in that way. They're getting it. Are you guys getting that, Lauren? Yeah. Okay.
Can we do this before another motion comes up?
Great. There you go. Yes, as he stated it, or no against the motion.
So there's a reason why I had several people come up to me saying, I'll be praying for you.
This is a good family. It's just a family discussion,
Absolutely.
which is always, it's very healthy. That didn't look right, but I think that looks right. Does that look right, Lauren? He says no. He said he didn't like it, so I think they ended up cutting it early. So I think it got cut off at 11 seconds. You want to do it again? Well, I was asking Lauren. Just to make sure. This is very important that we get the right, we want everybody to have a proper vote. There we go. Now it's going. There we go. Got 5 seconds left. Okay. And the motion passes by 83% to 17%. Okay. So now, that was just the amendment. So now we still have to vote. Now we're back to
the original motion.
The original motion.
And discussion on any other parts of the proposed changes to the bylaws.
That's correct. So now this would be anything else in there that you see philosophical issues with, or any of the big pieces. All right. Brother Donovan, state your name, please.
Yeah. Donovan Cack, Delegate at Large. I'll be quick. This is line number 649, just a correction. I believe the Roman numeral should read 18.
Yes, totally agree with you.
I'm so glad somebody knows Roman numerals. We're very,
Yep.
That's excellent. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Do we need to do anything with that? Brother?
Yes, Ben Matty from Billings. Similar on 518. I believe the Roman numeral should read 9 instead of IXI. It has an I on either side of the X.
So what line did you say?
518.
518. You're saying it should be IXI?
It's reading IXI. It should just read IX.
Thank you. Okay.
Feels a little bit like a Revelation seminar when we're dealing with Revelation 13. Oh, the Roman numerals. Okay. Are we ready for a vote? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and this is back to the, and this would say back to the original motion, but it would say as amended. Is that correct? Yes. As amended. All right. And this requires a 2/3 majority. Okay, so when it's been amended, that means we have to have 2/3. All right. So, we'll wait there. Okay, typing it in.
Yeah, I think the 2/3 majority is just for any amendments to the bylaws.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, the amendments can be by majority, but the final approval needs to be
Of bylaws always
Okay.
has to be 2/3. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Do you enjoy lawyers correcting lawyers? Must see TV. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I feel like I should do stand-up or something while we're waiting. Well, I had 2 friends who told me they were out of here at 4 no matter what. Those people know who they are. They're still here. So
good.
Must be the bylaws.
we should be able to push through the rest
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
There we go.
Okay? All right. And the timer's going.
Got to have 66%, is that right?
Okay.
There we go.
Passed by 96. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve, very much. Yes, very much appreciate the Bylaws Committee. They've put a lot of time, a lot of work into that. Let's go back to the main slides. I wanted to just do an acknowledgement to the Board of Directors that have been serving the last 4 years. Fantastic team, really. Since I came in 11 months ago, it's just been a pleasure to work with them, and nominating committee made some changes to that, which will come up here soon, but I just wanted to say a thank you, and it is a recommended. If you go to the next slide, actually I can do that. We'll go to the next slide. This was our Board of Directors for this past 4 years, and there's been some changes in and out as people have gone, but can I have the Board of Directors stand up, please? If your name is on there, please stand up. They have put in hours and hours and hours. I want to give them a thank you. Thank you all so much. Driving in terrible weather and all of that, and instead of doing a vote through that will take time, if we can just do, this is just to record a vote of appreciation for them. So is there a motion to do that? Is there a second to that? All in favor to say thank you. Any opposed? You'll be assigned the next 8 years to come and drive in difficult weather. So thank you all very much. I'm going to turn this over now to Elder Friedman, who's going to walk us through the last few pieces here.
All right, Kayla, we have got just a few things left. We have a new board of directors that we need to elect, and I think we can put them, do we have them on the screen?
Not yet.
There,
There we
yeah,
go.
they are. Okay. Now,
Oh, this is, yeah,
we do have the extra 2 on there.
okay.
Yes, yes,
Yep. As you noticed,
No.
we have expanded in fact, you just voted to expand the board of directors for the conference. You now have 3 officers instead of 2, as you had previously. And we had to add another layperson to kind of keep the balance of laity and church employees the same.
I think Bill?
Bill McClendon, Delegate at Large. The additional layperson was going to be referred to the Board of Directors, but the additional officers on this list.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, just for clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we have this list of names that have been given to us by the nominating committee, and you want to read those?
Sure. So do you want me to read all the names?
No.
Okay.
It's just the motion.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, on the screen are the nominees to serve as the 2022 through 2026 Board of Directors of the Montana Conference. Therefore, I move these names for consideration.
All right, that was the motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. And if there is anyone who says no that's on this list, or as we've heard that the extra person that we need now to fill out, to go from 15 to 17, they're going to be elected by the Board of Directors when the Board of Directors meets the first or second time. Okay? So, moved and seconded, and we're ready to vote. Okay, you can vote it up or down. 1 is yes, 2 is no. And my goodness, look at this. The last few, they've had 30 seconds on there.
Cut 'em.
I think they're wanting to get out of here, go home, I think. Okay, 96%, excellent. It's a very strong vote for that, and there's one more thing left to do. There is an Articles and Bylaws Committee that needs to be voted, and there's normally not a lot of changes made on these committees anywhere in the division, because you find they're very special people like Steve and like Andre down front that really enjoy all the ins and outs of the wording on there. So we do have a list of names. Do we have them? There they are. Okay, and so here's our motion.
Mr. Chairman, on the screen are the nominees to serve as the 2022 through 2026 Articles and Bylaws Committee of the Montana Conference. Therefore, I move these names for consideration.
Okay, we have a second. All right, and so I think we're ready to vote these up or down. All right, to approve the recommendation of the, not the nominating committee, but the, okay, we're getting there.
There it goes.
There it is, okay. Articles and bylaws, right. Up or down, 1 is yes and 2 is no. And Steve, I'm not sure, but it looks like some of those people who said they were leaving at 4 have already left. They have left the building. Okay, and that's a very strong majority. All right, so I think we are finished. Thank you so much, Kayla, for reading those.
Yeah.
Appreciate it a lot. And you know, as president of the union, it was a pleasure working with the nominating committee. A good team, good spirit, and this has been a wonderful spirit here today. So it's been fun being here, and I'm going to turn over to chairmanship to Ken.
Thank you. I've missed one piece, that we have gifts actually for those of you. Some of you are transitioning off because of the end of your term, and with the new board of directors coming on, and we had some gifts for those of you that are going off. So we don't want you to come up and embarrass you or anything to make you have speeches or anything like that. But we're going to just ask that can we bring those up here? Do the ladies have those? And those of you that are transitioning, oh, they're already here, ready to go. So those of you, please raise your hand when you're those transitioning off. We got several back here. Just raise your hand, and the ladies will bring those around to you. And this is just a thank you so much for all of your work. It was a pleasure working with you, and look forward to pulling you on some other committees as well. Jim, could you come forward, and we'll do the, let's go into the church company closure part here.
So, as we mentioned earlier about the Shelby Church, that is a vote that has to be taken here today and has to be by 2/3. And that is something that the Board of Directors has recommended. There is one slight issue here which I get to take full responsibility for. According to our bylaws, that was supposed to have been posted much like the notice I read from the Gleaner very early on in our meeting today, several hours ago. That was supposed to have happened in the Gleaner before we get to this stage. I did not get that posted into the Gleaner magazine ahead of time. And so if we were to vote the motion today, it would be, again, going out of what our bylaws have as policy, or we can simply not vote it today. It won't change what happens. There's nobody there at Shelby. The church is closed, and that's the reality. So we have to decide today whether we want to go ahead and vote, even though we didn't have the notice in the Gleaner, which should have been there at the same time the notice of the meeting was put in the Gleaner back in January and February. So,
and something to add to that, it doesn't mean that Shelby can't reopen.
That's right.
Because we've already been looking at that area. So this would just be a closure to that chapter, and we could open it back up with another church plant. So that's something to keep in mind.
But I guess, Mr. Chairman, just to get us moving in that direction, I would move that we would go ahead and grant that anyway,
Okay.
even though it wasn't in the Gleaner.
Okay. All right. So there's been a motion. Is there a second for that? Okay. Any other discussion or questions on that? All right. Are we okay with voting? This needs to be 2/3, or do we want to do? I think let's go ahead and put the motion up, and we'll just go with that up there. All right. And it's going now. Yep. Okay, it's 91%. That passes. And we are to the end. And I'd like to put up my last challenge to you, which is the slide, the next one. One more. It was actually on March 24 that Ellen White stood in front of the General Conference session. It's one of the most fascinating last pieces of closing out during that week of meetings. There had been a lot of contention, and she was going through, you can find the manuscript online, and she's encouraging and challenging them to work together as a world church at that time, which wasn't really big. But she got to right towards the end, and she said this, these words ring in my mind, because this is my dream for God to put within all of our hearts as we go forward. And some of you have probably already read it, but I do want to read it out loud to you. And it says, "Oh, how many times," Ellen White said, "when I have seemed to be in the presence of God and holy angels, I have heard the angel voice saying," how many times here? "Press together, press together, press together. Do not let Satan cast his hellish shadow between brethren. Press together. In unity there is strength. I repeat the message to you as you go to your homes. Be determined that you will press together. Seek God with all the heart, and you will find him. And the love of Christ that passeth understanding will come into your hearts and your lives." And that's what I wanted to finish our day together with. Let this ring in our hearts, that we're willing to do anything we can to mend relationships in your churches and to really press together. And let's go forward and just see what God is going to do through you and through us as a church family. We are so excited, and it's such a pleasure to serve you. And thank you again for being here today and for all of your time and effort that you've put into these meetings as well. So thank you. And I want to ask Bill McClendon, Vice President for Administration for NPUC, to please, before we do, we are going to have a motion to adjourn. You're right. So is there a motion to adjourn our meeting today? Is there a second to that? We're not doing 30 seconds. Are you okay with raising the hand? Any opposed? You're welcome to stay and help clean up chairs. That is just fine. We're okay with that.
All right. Will you stand as we ask for the benediction? Our Father in heaven, several hours ago we gathered in this place from all over the parts of this great conference. We have come to do the work of God, and we believe in this committee, in this group, in this gathering, in this session, we have felt your spirit, and we have seen you work. There is a spirit of unity that unites the people of God today in Montana. And Father, we pray as we go to our homes, our churches, and our schools, that your Spirit will go with us, that we will experience that latter rain power. There is many people to reach with the wonderful news of a loving Savior, and we pray that you would be with us. Our hope is that this will be the last session for the Montana Conference, that there will be no need for the next one because we will be in heaven. Thank you for that. Bless your people as we travel to our homes, for it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I've been asked to remind you to please take your voting devices, and where do you want them to put them? Where are the voting devices to go? There, as you go out the door, you will see them with boxes and just place them in there. Thank you. God bless you.